It was a critical moment. Varian had no time to teleport and acted instinctively. His arms moved up to guard his vitals as the space around him solidified. A barrier mixed with telekinetic powers was layered with a lightning wall. Boom! It felt like a duragium hammer struck his chest. Varian heard his ribs snap like dry wood as he crashed into a hill. Ka! He flattened the sharp mountain top on impact, forming a crater. Arg! A distinct sound escaped his lips as a sweet, metallic liquid filled his throat. Without control, Varian began coughing blood, adding it to the large red puddle he was lying in. Move! Varian commanded himself, but he couldn't. His body was falling apart, and his strength was leaving him with each passing second. Blood flowed from every inch of his body, from head to toe. His vision blurred, his hearing grew faint, and he was losing the sense of his own body. However, his mind was hyperactive. Perhaps due to telepathic powers, Varian hadn't stopped thinking since the moment he was hit. Fuck. I wasn't prepared for the attack at all. If I had taken proper measures, I'd have only suffered a minor injury. But now, he had to stop the bleeding. Varian channeled his prana. His bloodied body flashed and transformed into a tree man. The bleeding stopped immediately, and Varian sighed in relief. Roar! Following a triumphant roar, the stone giant dashed towards him. In no time, it would reach him, and if he didn't escape, it would crush him to pieces. Boo! Varian yelled again. His heart grew heavy, and he quickly used his authority to check the inside of the ghost ship. What the? Roar! The hill Varian was on started to shake, and he knew he was running out of time. He shifted his mental power to his storage ring and found a square-shaped item. Damn it! Roar! Cracks began to spread across the hill. Ka! Kacha! They started at the edge, splitting the land in two as metal spikes shot out. The cracks quickly approached Varian, about to engulf him. Come on! A metal appeared from his storage ring and shot out a silvery light, enveloping him as space twisted violently. Kacha! Whoosh! The moment the spikes shot up, Varian was already gone. Roar! The stone giant extended its level 7 earth sense and searched for his presence. It could track him despite his teleportation because a level 6 teleportation range was well within a level 7 sensing range. Roar! But unlike other times, there was no sign of Varian. Ka! 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 The small hill started to break down, and a cloud of dust rose into the air. The only thing that remained standing was the stone giant. Though it seemed perfectly fine, there were cracks on its body. Varian had managed to inflict injuries on a level 7. Cough! Cough! Varian clutched his chest and coughed out the remaining blood stuck in his throat. Lying in a cave on one of the hills, he used his telekinetic force to pour 2 potions over his body. The teleportation charm. When Varian won the solar trial, the sovereigns decided to gift him privately in addition to the enlightenment potion. Sovereign Vian had given him too much money. Julius gave him quite a few luxurious healing potions. Ironically, Creo, the one who messed up his memories, gave him potions to heighten his mental powers. Michael Caron, though stingy, gave him expensive armor, which was honestly useless. Irene told him she would assign a prince from the Nile family to guide him from level 6 to level 7, and she also offered to betroth him to one of her granddaughters who attended the banquet. It was an awkward episode that Varian quickly forgot, but now, thinking back, that girl was looking at him with glittering eyes. Ares gave him a ridiculous badge. Take this and come to the front lines. They'll deploy you to the most dangerous place for your level. Thank me later. If Varian thought he himself was a battle maniac, this guy was already past the point of no return. But the one that really helped today was Sovereign Kevin's gift, a teleportation talisman. Looking back, Varian didn't feel it was that important. He had Boo, after all. If he used Boo's one-time teleportation, he could escape even from level 9s. On the other hand, this talisman was only effective against level 7s. But now... Sovereign Kevin, I owe you one. Varian exhaled. Then, he checked the ghost ship again. His brows furrowed into a deep frown. With his guard up, he used his authority as the owner of the ghost ship and searched through it. Boo was definitely present, but some force seemed to be preventing it from manifesting. It wasn't just Boo, even the ghost ship was being prevented from manifesting itself. There goes my plan. Varian groaned inwardly. Now, he couldn't play easy mode anymore. In fact, it felt like he had been playing the easy mode for a long time. Ever since he had the ghost ship, Varian felt a sense of security. This feeling was even stronger because the ghost ship offered him a teleportation formation. But now, that sense of security was continuously being broken. First, on Pluto, by the strange abyssal devices. Then, Julius nearly tore apart the ghost ship. And now, in the ruins. As he lay on the hard, cold floor with a back riddled with injuries, Varian was confronted with an uncomfortable truth. The ghost ship wasn't invincible as he had initially thought. Nor could it help him through all his problems. Despite its many uses, there were things it couldn't overcome. If there was one thing he could rely on, it was something he seemed to have been neglecting: strength. A/N, Sovereign Kevin's gift was mentioned in chapter 315. Strength was the ultimate truth. Like a level 7 stone giant, which could easily destroy a small hill, a level 8 could effortlessly break apart large cities. A level 9 would be even more dangerous. The battles between peak level 9s could cause permanent geographical changes to moons. And sovereigns. They could shatter the continental plates of planets, divide seas in half, obliterate asteroids with ease, and kill hundreds of thousands of low-level awakeners with a single strike. I am lagging behind. If he strictly viewed his potential, he should have been at least a level 7 by now. Yet, he was still a level 6. Varian didn't waste time on useless things, but he could have managed his time better. It feels bad to know. Varian smiled wryly. But even if it is better, the truth must be spoken. Shoo! The rustling wind shook Varian out of his brief introspection. He tried to stand up but stopped. Moving around recklessly would only worsen the injuries that had just begun to heal. Thankfully, he didn't need to use his body to check. Varian's spatial sense spread out, and he quickly searched for the source. Outside his cave on the mountain were small bushes. The sound came from small insects, around level 3, hopping from one bush to another. Phew. Varian sighed in relief but shook his head again. This is the Serpent Ranges. The Serpent Ranges were the mountain ranges visible from the Violet Woods he had been teleported to. There were multiple reasons for the name, but the most commonly accepted one was due to the enormous number of Morpher beasts here. As the name suggested, most of them were snakes. These snakes became even more terrifying after morphing. Legend had it that the entire mountain range, spanning several dozen miles, was actually a layer of skin shed by a snake. That would be a celestial rank snake, the thought popped up in Varian's mind naturally. He couldn't help but imagine the immense power of such a creature. If a sovereign could break apart continental plates and split seas, then what could a celestial rank individual do? For starters, blowing up a planet. Whoa, fuck you for startling me, Varian cursed his beloved system. Then the Deva civilization, they even captured such celestial rank beings. Varian felt a sense of awe. Those losers are nothing to be in awe of, the system said coldly. What did they lose? No, who did they lose to? Varian asked. In response, the system said, don't overthink. Just fight. Fight my ass, Varian raised his fist, but the sharp sting from his wounds brought him back to reality. His injuries were no longer threatening, but they still needed time. 10 minutes in this place. Varian didn't panic, however. Only his body was unusable for the moment. His other powers were still usable. He always had the option of using his space powers to escape from the fight. Unlike the time with the stone giant, this wasn't a plain but a mountainous area. So, his opponent wouldn't be able to reach him quickly once he teleported. Using that gap, Varian was confident he could ditch even a level 7 beast. But he didn't think such a need would arise. This cave and even the hill have a low concentration of aura. That means... Hiss. Following a light hiss, his space sense detected a snake crawling up the hill towards the cave he was in. It was only 10 centimeters long and looked very cute. That was until it reached the cave entrance and sensed him. It looked like a cobra with green scales. Hiss. Its scarlet tongue flicked into the air, and the snake's body glowed green. What the? The cute snake vanished, replaced by a menacing snake more than 5 meters long and as thick as a person. Its green scales turned scarlet, and it gained a third eye on its forehead. Moreover, its aura was at the peak of level 6, around April 6th or May 6th. This can scare children, Varian rolled his eyes. The snake sensed its prey and slithered toward him in the blink of an eye. Each time its tongue flicked, green saliva splashed on the floor, melting the soil and stones in its path. As it opened its mouth to bite him, Varian's body remained still. All this time, he had been thinking of something else. Since this thing appeared here, it means this cave is its nest. A level 6 nest, it should be a child of some big snake. So, this area should be safe for the next 10 minutes. He nodded inwardly and shifted his gaze to the snake's wide mouth. Whoosh! When its mouth was only a few inches from his neck, the snake's movements suddenly halted. Its mind began to ache, and it lost control of its body. The snake quickly regained control but could no longer attack with full intent. At that moment, an invisible force gripped its neck and yanked it into the cave wall. Hiss. Taken by surprise, the snake was unprepared and easily crashed into the wall. However, the collision did little damage due to its tough black scales. Tisk. Before the snake could adjust, the real attack came. The space around its head solidified, and the invisible force tightened around its neck once more. Hiss. The snake lashed out its tail at Varian to kill him before he could do anything funny, but he simply teleported to another place. Cree. As the snake was about to break free of the shackles, a golden light flashed in the cave. Whoosh! A golden spear, thrown with the strength of telekinesis and filled with lightning mana, pierced the snake's head. Blood splattered and dyed the cave green. Show! The blood was also acidic, melting away everything it touched. Varian formed an invisible barrier and remained unharmed. Well, now that's how you fight without moving a finger, Varian laughed. The next 10 minutes passed peacefully as his injuries finally healed. Varian stretched his body and stood up. Even if he didn't want to, the increase in his strength was obvious. Status asterisk. Body path level 6, 3/6, +1. Space path level 6, 3/6. Lightning path level 6, February 6th. Morpher path level 6, 3/6, +1. Telepath path level 6, 2/6. Telekinetic path level 6, 2/6, +1. Water path level 5, 0/2000. Varian exhaled deeply and walked out of the cave. With a light tap, a screenshot appeared from his bracelet, showing the explored and unexplored locations of the ruins along with general information. To reach level 7. Varian narrowed his eyes and recalled one particular place. Before they entered the ruins, Enigma had given him some important info. In her own words, she had visited all the ruins except Earth's. She didn't give him a reason why she was doing it, but it didn't seem to be solely for finding materials to build her space shuttle. And even though she had never been to Earth's ruins, it seemed she had enough information. Use this information to your advantage and grow stronger. Her words echoed in his mind. Varian's lips curled up as he selected an explored location on the screen, the Golden Room. The Earth ruins, or simply Trian Ruin, were vast. However, the exploration of these ruins has been ongoing for centuries, and humanity has more or less mapped every area. Of course, this knowledge is limited. In the early stages, humans were much weaker, even level 7s were incredibly rare back then. Thus, the exploration of the ruins took time. It began with the weakest areas and, over time, humans gradually uncovered almost every region with their current strength. A few decades ago, they hit a ceiling. They had uncovered everything they could with their strength. What remained was beyond their reach. For instance, the Silver Valleys, a place covered by a silver barrier at all times. When a level 9 attempted to cross the barrier, they were repelled. This effort wasn't without cost, the level 9 was nearly killed. Even sovereigns, the most powerful beings, tried to explore it, but it was beyond their reach. I am confident I can cross this barrier. But what will reach the other side will only be my body. I will be dead by then, said Caesar Xander. Julius used to visit the area until recently, but even he did not attempt to break into it. Thus, unexplored areas were strictly off-limits. There were also fully explored areas, which people knew a great deal about, if not everything. Lastly, there were partially explored areas, regions where people had some understanding but not complete knowledge. For example, an underground dungeon with thousands of tunnels, each leading to different locations. These partially explored regions weren't too dangerous, but being careless could cost one's life. For this reason, partially explored areas became the favorite spots for every team. They offered the perfect balance of risk and reward, and there was always a chance that an adventurer might discover a big treasure and strike it rich. Compared to them, explored areas are far less popular. Varian clicked his tongue, and his figure blurred. In 1 second, he was atop a mountain, and the next, he was on a tree, miles away from the mountain. Like a flickering light, he disappeared and reappeared. The bracelet on his wrist had a very basic locating function, but it was enough. But they're the best bet for me. I can accurately pick the ones that can help me instead of risking my life recklessly. In 30 minutes, Varian arrived at the foot of a large mountain. With a kick, he shot up the hill and paused. He saw it. It had the dimensions of an apartment, but it was only a gate. A golden gate, so high and wide that he had to raise his head to see its top and turn around to take in its full width. The gate was carved with Deva script, which was still only partially understood. Finally. Varian heaved a sigh of relief and walked forward. To his surprise, there was a crowd of 30 people in the area. Wait, why are there so many people? Considering that the ruins were as large as Earth and there were only a few tens of thousands of members, 30 was a significant number. They were divided into multiple teams of 3 to 5 members, each team fiercely discussing strategies and tactics. After words like limits, overcome, and endure were tossed around, the discussion finally shifted. Everyone came together and started what seemed like betting. Don't bet on those Martian crybabies. Their squads didn't do anything the last time we crushed the abyssal patrols, a handsome man with curly brown hair said, snorting in disdain. Varian felt like he had seen him somewhere, but he couldn't remember. Pretty sure it's a solar banquet. The best bet is on Neptune, a woman with long platinum hair chuckled and said. Of course, Earth comes close, but we have an edge. She, too, seemed familiar. Varian rummaged through his memories as the conversation continued. Nah, Venus will be the dark horse. This time, Prince Felix himself will crush everyone. Dark horse my ass. Prince Karl will show you what despair is. Fuck off. This is Earth, and no one's going to take away the victory from us, a man with blue hair and golden eyes declared, crossing his arms. The young men and women, who seemed to be in their mid-20s, marched towards the gate. This princeling gang, what are they doing? Varian stood far away, having just recognized the group. Of course, his presence was sensed by them. But since he didn't go any further, they didn't bother him. They want to keep up their reputation. Prince and princess titles can be revoked, after all, Varian thought. But the reason was actually very different. Hey, I can't feel that guy's aura at all. A psychic looked at her teammates and furrowed her brows. Such a situation usually meant that the other party was either unawakened or much stronger than them. He is just watching us from a distance. We don't have anything that interests him either. Just make sure not to bother him, a man replied and nodded at the others. The conversations continued, but now, they were much more reserved. Meanwhile, Varian checked the identities of the group again. It wasn't too hard to recognize these people. Since he was a mind awakener, he could retrieve any of his memories. From his memory of the solar banquet, he noted that most of them were princes and princesses. They weren't too old, but the youngest of them was in their early 40s. And their level is Prince Alex, Water. Peak level 7, Princess Hua, Lightning. Peak level 7, Prince Cain, Superhuman. Peak level 7. Morpher. Peak level 7, once he found out their levels from the system, it was crystal clear. So they want to test how far they can go, eh? Varian's lips curled up. He watched the 30 princes and princesses walk into the Golden Gate and disappear. What will be the highest? For some reason, he was curious. Since these were the best geniuses in the solar system, they should give him an idea of how far ahead or behind humans were at the moment. Host, you shouldn't compare yourself to them. It's an insult. Then who should I compare myself to? For starters, try a 18-year-old at level 9. Fuck off. Varian didn't want to wait for his results. His curiosity wasn't that strong, but more importantly, his anticipation was burning within him. Even though I can meet Sia on the last day, I want to be as strong as possible, he thought. Her words, spoken without much thought, rang in his mind. I am level 7 now. I can take care of myself. And if I'm not unlucky, this will be our last meeting. Varian clenched his fists and took a deep breath. Since he was going to see her, he needed to be as strong as she was. But as a hybrid, Sia would have 3 level 7 paths. Moreover, he didn't know if she was a low level 7 or peak level 7. I want to at least say that I'm trying my best. Varian's figure blurred, and he walked through the gate. Space twisted and rippled. The next second, Varian found himself in a large room with no ceiling, revealing the green sky with 4 moons. The walls, including the floor, were dark gold. Golden Room, what a simple name, he thought. But this was the perfect trial for him. Welcome to the trial, contestant. Are you ready? An ethereal voice echoed in his mind. He couldn't understand the language, but he grasped the meaning. Yes, Varian said. The walls of the room began to recede, and the room started to expand. One of the moons in the sky shone brightly, and a beam of light descended upon him. Mortal rank 2, final layer. Initiating the first stage. The voice trailed off. Mortal rank? Varian muttered. Mortal ranks encompass levels 1 to 9. The system answered. Higher civilizations have a different classification. Level 1 to 3 is rank 1, 4 to 6 is rank 2, and 7 to 9 is rank 3. The first 3 ranks are collectively known as mortal ranks, or sometimes, mortal boundary. Then, the celestial ranking starts from rank 4. Wait, how many of these ranks are there? Is there anything above celestial ranks? Yes. Yes, what? Focus on the trial. Host, at least get out of the mortal ranks before trying to inquire about the universe. Varian cursed the system's mother, father, and every other relative it ever had or would have. Krah. A war cry cut him off. Varian turned to the source and saw a giant roar. A huge aura exploded in the now vast room. Varian felt it too. His aura is peak level 6. If I compare it to my own classification, it'd be 1/6. This was one of the few known areas that provided opponents based on the player's level rather than a fixed standard. For example, there were trials that had great resources but required at least level 8 strength to enter. But this one is better if I can get the final reward. Varian's lips curled up. Boom. The giant stomped the ground and charged at Varian. His giant hands clenched into a fist, ready to strike. Snap! With a single snap, an invisible force slapped the giant. Ka! Like a fly swatted, the huge giant was slammed to the ground. His arms and torso bled heavily, and his internal organs were a mess. But he wasn't done yet. Roar! With another war cry, the giant tried to stand up. Varian tapped his finger, and the space around him fluctuated. Ka! Ka! Kacha! Space cracked around the giant's body, slicing him like invisible blades. The previously tough giant collapsed into a puddle of violet blood. Varian's first attack had broken his bones and internal organs, and the second attack was now bleeding him to death. I can't let him die such a miserable death, Varian said, putting on a kind expression and waving his hand. Zap! 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 With the rumble of lightning, a golden lightning spear pierced the giant's head, shattering it into pieces. Varian watched with a smile. Host, you seem to be enjoying this. Why wouldn't I? I'm always facing higher opponents, not that I'm complaining. But this takes a burden off my chest. Snapping my fingers and killing enemies on my level is very refreshing. The giant's corpse turned into specks of light and dispersed. One particular light shot out and entered Varian's body before he could react. Varian didn't panic. This was why he chose this place. Closing his eyes, he sensed a golden orb within him, filled with a very special aura. He could assimilate it whenever he wanted, and once he did, it would significantly progress his divine paths. It was also the prize for winning the fight and the main attraction of the Golden Room. Others would assimilate only after exiting the ruins, but Varian had no such concern. With a single thought, the golden orb dissolved, and the special aura mixed into his body. It contained every aura derivative. Others would have taken only the aura derivative of the path they were following and wasted the rest, but Varian wasted none. Even though a single orb couldn't help much, it still made a difference. Body path level 6, 2/6. Space path level 6, 3/6. Lightning path level 6, 2 out of 6. Morpher path level 6, 2/6. Telepath path level 6, 2/6. Telekinetic path level 6, 1/6. Water path level 5, 50/2000, plus 50, ***. His other paths would need more orbs and, in fact, better orbs to improve. Initializing the second stage. Following the ethereal voice, a cunning cry sounded. A green, fox-like creature appeared at the other end of the room, which was now, almost a few miles away. Key. As their gaze connected, Varian felt a sharp, prickling pain in his mind, and his body started to resist his own control. Fuck off, he spat coldly. Varian's body blurred. Key. The fox thought he was going to teleport to it and forcefully intervened. As a result, Varian's teleportation was off by a large margin, and he appeared in a corner of the room. But the fox couldn't laugh. Shwa. A lightning claw appeared out of nowhere and tore its weak body to pieces. Soon, its body also turned into light particles and disappeared. 2 golden orbs shot out from the corpse and entered Varian's body. This one's strength is peak level 6, 2/6. He shrugged and prepared himself. What followed could only be described as a slaughter. Initializing third stage. Initializing fourth stage. Initializing sixth stage. The opponent was an ape that morphed into a King Kong. Varian sweated a little but finished it off by merging his powers. There we go, this one has peak level 6/6 strength. Varian thought as 6 golden orbs from the ape's corpse entered his body. Next is the real meat. His eyes narrowed. The Golden Room had 10 stages. Your opponent would be at the peak of your level, starting at the first point of the peak, such as 1/6 for level 6, and reaching the absolute peak. But he just defeated a 6/6. The last 4 stages will have opponents stronger than any peak level 6, but weaker than level 7. Varian felt his blood boil with excitement. Compared to the previous 6, these last 4 stages offered far better rewards. Devis and system seemed to follow a similar style of grading. So, level 6 and 1/6 in Varian's status was equivalent to the first stage. However, there were only 6 locks. In contrast, the Golden Room had 10 stages. While it seemed paradoxical, it actually wasn't. Prove your worth. A voice sounded in Varian's mind, and a large creature appeared before him. It was similar to a horse, but its entire body was covered in white fur, and it had a scorpion tail. Varian cursed the aesthetics of the Devis and teleported. Ka. The place he had been standing was now occupied by the horse-like beast. Space path. Varian narrowed his eyes and raised his hand. Zap. Zap. A spear of lightning condensed in his hand. Roar. The horse beast's body wriggled, and its tail tripled in size, almost as tall as a person now. Morpher path? Varian narrowed his eyes, and the beast's actions confirmed his suspicions. Bubbling green liquid shot into the air, reaching Varian. As he tried to teleport away, the space around him tightened and started breaking down. Varian covered his fist with lightning and punched out while using telekinetic force to strengthen his punch. The space binding broke easily, and he teleported away. SSSS. The liquid splashed on the floor, and the floor began to melt. Moreover, a strange smell began to spread through the room. Poison. Varian held his breath and carefully observed the floor. Even though it could withstand level 6 out of 6 attacks, it was useless against the venom. However, the venom by itself wasn't that dangerous. But when combined with the beast's ability to bind him in place, it became terrifying. I see. Varian understood why this beast was the opponent for the 7th stage. This creature would kill even the most peak level SXS. Varian managed to escape easily thanks to his space path, which disrupted the beast's spatial interference, combined with his other path powers. Prove your worth, the voice sounded again, this time with more solemnity. Is it talking about the prize? Varian drew back his foot and clenched his fist. The space around his fist solidified, then was covered by a lightning gauntlet. Ha! Varian kicked the ground, and his body shot forward. Roar! The horse beast roared, and the space around it fluctuated. It was about to teleport. Stay, Varian said, locking down the space around the beast. His interference caused a delay, but the beast easily broke through his space block. If this continued, Varian would be too late. He could teleport, but by the time he arrived, the beast would be gone. Over very short distances, his speed was faster than teleportation, and he was at such a distance. That's why. Varian's body, mid-air, suddenly accelerated as if pushed by someone, by his own telekinetic power. Boom! Boom! Air blasted and shockwaves spread as Varian reached the beast just before it teleported. Gotcha! His fist connected with the beast, and it disappeared. Boom! As the beast vanished, Varian crashed directly to the ground, shattering the tough alloy tiles. Thankfully, he blocked the space around him and used telekinetic power to slow down at the last moment, or he would have suffered significant injuries. Shwa! Varian bent abruptly, and a lump of green acidic venom passed where his head had been. SSSS. SSSS. If it had really hit, I'd be dead, Varian thought, looking at the melting metals on the floor. Then, he turned around and saw the beast. Half of its body was gone, and the other half was on the verge of collapse. Even though it was a beast morpher, its physical defense was as good as a mind awakener's. TCH. Varian's figure blurred, and he appeared in front of the beast in the blink of an eye. The creature tried to resist but was killed by a single punch. Thud. As it collapsed onto the ground, a bright light flashed. The corpse turned into specks of light, and the damage to the room was restored. Whoosh! A ball of light shot out from the corpse and entered Varian's body. Unlike the previous golden orbs, this one was red. Varian sensed it and smiled. The aura within it was fundamentally on a higher level compared to the golden orbs. He also looked at his stock of golden orbs. Except for the first one, he hadn't absorbed any. So, he currently had 1 red orb and 20 golden orbs. Absorb. Varian closed his eyes and released the aura from all the orbs. The aura was massive and active as it entered his own aura. But like a river joining an ocean, it assimilated without a hitch. Varian felt his divine path's progress, as if the wall blocking them was slowly breaking down. 10 minutes passed, and Varian opened his eyes. Status. Body path level 6, 3/6, +1. Space path level 6, 4/6, +1. Lightning path level 6, 3/6, +1. Morpher path level 6, 3/6, +1. Telepath path level 6, 3/6, +1. Telekinetic path level 6, 2/6, +1. Water path level 5, 2000/2000, +1950. There was a significant improvement in all paths. The 20 golden orbs roughly equaled half of the red orb's effect. Apart from the unconquered 10th stage, there are also 8th and 9th stages. That should give me 5 more red orbs. Varian furrowed his brows and thought. 5 red orbs were enough to reach June 6th. But to advance to level 7? I should reach level 7 here no matter what. He knew of many places he could explore and have an edge in, but all of them required him to be at least level 7. In a way, this golden room was an anomaly. Firstly, any person could only challenge it once in their lifetime. Their age, level, and paths didn't matter. The results depended not on absolute strength but on their relative strength compared to their level. It was as if you have the potential of a general. Do you wish to continue the trial and challenge higher potential? The ethereal voice sounded in his mind again, and Varian sighed. The Golden Room used to be a place to determine potential Deva leaders. The opponent in the 8th stage was a dual awakener monster, both of its paths being 6 out of 6. It was a plant as tall as an adult, a beautiful blue thing that looked perfectly normal until, whoosh. The room was flooded with water, and the blue plant wriggled. Roo! The plant morphed into a blue fish. Varian only had time to blink before he sidestepped, but it was too late. Boom! He was hit on the sides and sent flying. The next thing he knew, he crashed into a wall, breaking a few bones as he coughed up blood. Roo! The fish's scream came again, but even with Varian's hypervision, he couldn't see it. Lightning wings appeared on Varian's back. With a flap, he flew into the air. He spread his spatial sense and probed the water, which was unnaturally blue, blending perfectly with the fish's color. But thankfully, his spatial sense didn't depend on sight. Gotcha! Varian's eyes lit up as he sensed a 1-meter-long blue-scaled fish. However, his happy mood didn't last as he carefully observed the creature. This motherfucking combination. The fish kept absorbing water mana from the water. With each flap of its fins, the water mana became more integrated with its body. Elemental awakeners were usually stronger in their native element, like Sarah, who gained a strength boost in the water dungeon. But this fish took it a step further. Its morphed form, the blue-scaled fish, seemed to thrive on the water mana from the surrounding bodies of water. And by being a water awakener, it provided that very water mana to itself. With this significant boost, it was stronger than any level 6. Whoosh! 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 3 water pillars shot out and reached Varian in the blink of an eye. Varian teleported away and looked at where he had been standing. The water pillars collided with a loud boom. The shockwaves from the blast were so strong that they would have killed even the best peak level 5s. You fucking fish, Varian muttered, rolling his eyes and avoiding another combo of water pillars. Boom! Varian didn't want to fight the fish in the water. It was both stupid and dangerous. But if things continued like this, he could forget about winning. If it isn't in the water. Varian's eyes narrowed. The fish itself wasn't a strong opponent. It was the water mana that gave it this boost. Despite being a water awakener and having water mana in its own body, it needed a body of water flowing with water mana. Otherwise, it wouldn't need to go to such lengths to keep the room's water filled with water mana. Now this is interesting, Varian chuckled, barely avoiding the water pillars again. If he had been careless, he would have taken a serious injury. Roo! The fish released the water mana from its body into the water. The water mana dispersed, and the fish lost control over it once it entered the water. The mana swirled, clashed, and finally re-entered its body, completing the loop. The fish's base physical powers and mana control skyrocketed. Boom! Boom! Roo! The fish screamed as it shot the water pillars at Varian. Its strategy was simple and clear: force Varian to keep dodging without any break until he was exhausted, and then it could kill him with ease. But suddenly, its mind slowed down. A foreign force broke into its mind, and in that brief moment, another invisible force formed walls around the fish, separating it from the water body. It was the telekinetic force. The space around this invisible wall solidified, creating a stronger barrier. Humph. The telekinetic force lifted the invisible box. Roo! The fish wasn't a weakling, and with a single flap of its fins, it shattered the invisible walls and the blocked space. At that moment, the invisible box hadn't fully emerged from the water yet, but due to the pull, it was just below the surface. Zap! Right then, a very small lightning bolt reached the water surface right above the fish. The lightning immediately evaporated the water it touched. Since it was very targeted, the evaporation was limited to a very small radius, causing more water in the same spot to evaporate. Roo! Since the fish was pulled just below the surface, and the lightning bolt struck in that exact position, the water around it also evaporated. Due to its physique, the fish's injuries from the lightning bolt were minimal. But Roo! For a brief moment, the fish had no water around it. It flapped its fins and was about to dive when the space around it fluctuated, and a figure appeared. Boom! With a single punch, Varian shattered the fish's head and ended its life. A light flashed, and the room lit up. In a few seconds, the water in the room disappeared along with all traces of the fish's remains. Whoosh! 2 red orbs reached Varian, and he happily absorbed them. 2 is indeed better than 1. Varian smirked, and for some reason, Sarah and Sia flashed in his mind. Shut up. He focused back on the red orbs. It wasn't just the aura these orbs gave. It was strange to say, but they seemed to give insights. Strange. While he thought, he continued assimilating the aura. Normally, any awakener took weeks to digest these insights and the aura. That's why no one absorbed the orbs inside the ruins. But Varian was different. Splash. Varian's status. Body path level 6, 4/6, +1. Space path level 6, 4/6. Lightning path level 6, April 6th, +1. Morpher path level 6, 4/6, +1. Telepath path level 6, 4/6, +1. Telekinetic path level 6, 3/6, +1. Water path level 6, 500/4000, advanced, +500. If Sarah knew that I reached level 6 in less than a week after awakening. Varian's lips curled into a teasing smile. Of course, it seemed so easy and even effortless. After all, he had just gone from low level 5 to low level 6 in less than 2 hours. If it was really that easy, why didn't everyone do it? Because it wasn't actually easy. Of course, if only the first 6 stages were considered, the trial wasn't that hard. Considering that the 21 golden orbs he got from the first 6 stages gave him almost 1000 XP, the rewards were fine. But since a person could only challenge this golden room once in their life, awakeners tended to use the opportunity at higher levels. They just have to participate in the trial when they are on the verge of advancing. However, the golden orbs were nothing compared to the red orbs. Not only did the red orbs supply aura, but they also seemed to give insight. Varian felt that these things were way more helpful for high-level awakeners. Varian obtained the red orbs only after defeating monsters that were even stronger than his peak level. Therefore, if anyone wanted the same reward, they'd have to do the same. A 6-6 awakener could easily win the first 6 stages. But how could a peak level 7 defeat a being supposed to be stronger than any peak level 7? The only way was to be a highly battle-hardened genius or a dual awakener. But even dual awakeners can't guarantee a victory in the 7th stage, Varian shrugged. The 8th stage is even harder. Even triple awakeners might not win it. So, this is the standard of Devis, Varian sighed. You have the potential to be a planet ruler. Do you wish to continue the trial and challenge the potential of the Emperor? The ethereal voice sounded in his mind again, almost seeming a bit joyful. Emperor. Varian muttered the word. Yes, the Emperor. The voice replied, startling Varian. You can talk. Basic retrieval of data from archives is enabled. What happens if I win the next stage? You will be one of the few with the potential to be the Deva Emperor. You will be a Deva Prince. Only potential? Yes. You must still compete with the other princes. The strongest one will become the Emperor. Other princes? Varian tilted his head. There are other princes? Hello? Yes. Are there other princes? The voice fell silent again. Varian rubbed his chin and asked another question. When was the last prince selected? The voice fell silent, and when Varian thought it wouldn't answer, it replied surprisingly. 6,500 years ago. Fuck. Varian could feel it. He was close to level 7. The only question is whether the 3 red orbs would be sufficient. Prove your worth. With those words, the golden room shone. Varian's nerves tensed as he channeled his powers and assumed an offensive posture. If this is the qualification to fight for the throne of Devis, then it means there is likely more than one who can defeat this monster in every generation. Are the Devis so strong, or are we humans too weak? You've made it this far. Congratulations. A voice sounded in Varian's mind, and a white light flooded the room. It was blindingly bright, but Varian didn't close his eyes. He couldn't afford to. In front of him stood a person who looked human. It was a man, a middle-aged handsome individual with dark hair and green eyes. At first glance, he seemed perfectly normal, but there was something off about him. It was hard to express, but this monster didn't feel human to Varian, despite its appearance. Since you've come this far, you're a precious asset to our empire. The man gave a warm smile and continued, every one of your deaths is a great loss. He's a pre-recorded program, Varian muttered inwardly, raising an eyebrow. You want me to give up here? Oh no. The temptation to pursue great things will never stop, but if we act impulsively, we'll lose everything we have. The man's brows furrowed as if he remembered something unpleasant. Varian didn't respond. The creature in front of him wasn't sentient. Sure, it responded to his queries and even replied, but it couldn't distinguish a human from a Deva. That's precisely our history. Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. The man's voice turned low, but it was very solemn. Wait, what happened in your history? Varian took a step forward and looked the man in the eye. According to the system, the Devas sealed it, and to do that, they also had to seal off the aura. But it backfired and led to their extinction. However, Varian had a feeling that the man wasn't referring to that incident. And I don't even know if the sealing happened when this Deva was recorded into this trial. Are you talking about the sealing? Varian asked promptly. If possible, he wanted more information about the system. He didn't want to wield a weapon he didn't understand. System? What system? The man waved his hand in irritation. Okay, I get it. You youngsters have forgotten our ancient history anyway. Ancient? Since you didn't leave, let's start. With those words, the man flicked his wrist, and a long sword with a thin blade appeared in his hand. In response, Varian also held a sword, but in contrast to his opponent, his sword's blade was large at the base and narrowed to a sharp tip. Life or death, the man said, and the next moment, his figure blurred. Huh. Varian could see it clearly. The man kicked the ground, and his speed skyrocketed. Enhancer Awakener. He upped his speed. Whoosh. But he was too fast. Varian just raised his sword, and the man was already in front of him. No, how can he have this speed? Varian hurriedly raised his sword to meet his opponent's strike. Shwa. Varian used his physical strength in his swing while also adding lightning and spatial powers around the sword. At the same time, he attacked his opponent's mind and struck the sword with an invisible telekinetic force. A green light flashed, and the man suddenly sped up. How? Varian was baffled. It didn't feel like his speed had increased, but rather that his time had quickened. Fuck. The air burned as flames engulfed the man's sword. Instead of interfering with the blade, the flames perfectly integrated and enhanced its powers even further. It was the first time Varian had seen a weapon so thoroughly mingled with mana. While still in surprise, Varian calmly struck his opponent's sword with his own. Clang. It was a simple sound of metal colliding. But the result was a huge shockwave that emerged from their point of contact. Flap. Flap. Varian's hair ruffled in the wind as his clothes shook violently. Both were pushed back by 10 steps. At first, it seemed like they were equals, but a crack sounded in the room. Ka. Ka. Kacha. Varian's sword broke into pieces and fell at his feet. The skin on his fingertips started to crack and spread all the way to his forearm. Pa. His skin cracked, and like water bursting through a broken dam, blood gushed out. Slash. Splash. Splah, the blood formed 2 small puddles, but before the third could be formed, Varian's arm morphed into a brown branch. In the blink of an eye, his skin returned to normal. The injury itself wasn't severe, so his planty healing easily took care of it. Weren't you a body awakener? How do you? The man frowned and asked with a confused face. But only a sword swing answered him. The man only frowned lightly and lifted his sword with ease. At first, his speed was slow, and it seemed like he wouldn't be able to make it in time. But then, Varian's space sense caught a green light, and suddenly, the man sped up. Time path. Boom. Ka. Kacha. Kacha. Varian was blasted away again, but this time, he wasn't injured. Of course, his sword still broke into pieces. This time, however, he felt more comfortable with the clash. I'm adjusting quickly, it seems. With 5 paths at April 6th of level 6 and 1 path at March 6th, he should be stronger. Since he broke through, Varian had taken a short time to adjust. And why the hell should I fight back with a sword? It's better to exploit the advantages the situation gives me. My first-time path opponent, Varian smiled, but it quickly turned into a sneer. Too bad, you aren't helping me awaken in that 1 path. Awaken? What do you mean? The man asked in genuine confusion. Varian answered with an attack. A bright light flashed, and 20 lightning spears shot at the man from all directions. They reached him simultaneously, putting him in a difficult situation. He couldn't block them all at once. This was usually an advantage elementalists had over others. In contrast, in close combat, they were worse off. Whoosh. But of course, victory wouldn't be possible with that single edge. The man's legs tensed, and he was prepared to blast out of the siege. Futile, he spat coldly, but he saw the candidate's lips curl into a mocking smile. Coup. The man's eyes almost popped out as a terrifying pain assaulted his mind. He channeled his chi and reduced the pain. Zap! 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 The lightning spears were approaching, and the man leaned forward, about to bolt out. But right then, the space around him was blocked. Gotcha! With a simple sword swipe, the man broke the space block, but another one quickly followed. It was the telekinetic barrier. That wasn't too hard either. But the overall delay was significant. As the lightning spears were about to engulf him, a green light flashed. Varian watched with his mouth agape as the lightning spears slowed down. At this rate, the man seemed like he could escape. Except, another set of lightning spears arrived. It was unexpected and quick. The man had just stepped out of the first set when he was forced to block a dozen more. Clang! As he sped up his time, the attack on his mind continued. Pierce. In the end, a single spear pierced through the right side of his chest. Looking at the blue blood gushing out of the man's chest cavity, Varian was once again reminded that this man wasn't really human. Whoosh! As Varian prepared for his next attack, a green light flashed. The wind seemed to slice into two parts as the man's sword, burning in flames, reached Varian in an instant. Time skip. Varian teleported away and clenched his fists. The space around the man twisted, and a sheet of lightning engulfed him. With his injury yet to be healed, his performance declined, and the lightning injured him. Zap! 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 Varian didn't miss the chance and bombarded him with coordinated attacks. With each strike, the man's performance fell, and Varian's attacks inflicted more damage. But as he was about to finish off the man, a green light burst from his body. Die! It was the final strike of his opponent. If he had 100% strength at his peak, this was something like 120%. Varian put up all his defenses, yet they still crumbled. It was a dangerous moment. Varian almost thought his neck was going to be cut. In the final moment, he morphed into a plant form. This increased his height to 3 meters, and the sword pierced through his plant's stomach. It was a narrow escape, and Varian wanted to kill the man brutally. But to his surprise, the man collapsed onto the ground and turned into specks of light. Varian turned back to his human form and clutched his injury. Thankfully, his aura mobilized itself to defend against the fire, or he would have been burnt from the inside. What was that? Varian didn't understand the final strike. It wasn't a normal attack. When he raised his sword for the final strike, the man looked perfectly fine. But when the sword pierced through Varian's stomach, the man was a skinny bag of bones. Is it something that increases power in exchange for life force? Varian muttered in suspicion. His stomach was covered by leaves as his plant form quickly healed his injuries. After downing a potion, Varian sat on the floor, lost in thought. At some point, 3 red orbs shot into Varian's body. Without much thought, he simply processed them. Boom! Boom! It was as if volcanoes erupted inside him, and the aura suddenly turned turbulent. The sudden spike in aura was so intense that Varian was forced to calm it down. As he did, he didn't miss the obvious changes in his body. His healing speed increased considerably, his strength rose, and every aspect of his divine paths reached a greater height. Status. Body path, level 6, 6/6, +2. Space path, level 6, 6/6, +2. Lightning path, level 6, 6/6, +2. Morpher path, level 6, 6/6, +2. Telepath path, level 6, 6/6, +2. Telekinetic path, level 6, 6/6, +3. Water path, level 6, 0/6, +3,500. Varian checked his status again, just to be sure. After confirming that he wasn't seeing things, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. This was the best boost he had ever received. Once I reach level 7 in these 6 paths. Varian couldn't even imagine it. But the real fun starts when I hit level 9. According to the system, he already had all the paths needed for the celestial ranks. Except the time path. As he expected, the time path was indeed formidable. But it didn't seem too powerful to break the balance. I only fought one person, I can't be sure. Varian shook his head and stretched his arms. It would be great if he could awaken on the time path, but since humans had no time awakeners, Varian didn't know how to improve that path through fighting. Shaking his head, he focused his attention back on his divine paths. He could feel it, level 7. He was at the doorstep. All that was left was to break it open and storm in. On average, a genius would spend about 6 months on this step. Varian clicked his tongue. Of course, I can do it much faster, but I have 6 damn paths. While more paths gave Varian a significant edge, they came with a price. Until now, he had absorbed 6 red orbs. If he were a single awakener, just 1.5 orbs would have been enough for him to advance to level 7. But even after taking 6 orbs, he still hadn't reached level 7. A few minutes passed, and Varian's injuries healed. He also adjusted to the increase in his power. Varian was at his strongest ever. If he fought the same opponent, he could kill him with ease. Congratulations on clearing the 9th stage. You are now eligible to compete for the throne. Let the Deva Empire triumph in glory, ****. As the ethereal voice sounded, the room shrank back to its original size. Varian noticed 2 doors in the room, one red, one blue. You can exit through the blue door. Glory to you and the Devas, ****. The ethereal voice cheered again. Varian didn't move. Please exit. The trial is over, ****. It isn't, Varian shook his head. The 10th stage, it's beyond that door, right? It is the door to certain death. No one has been able to clear it since its inception. Don't throw away your future, ****. Even though we are no longer the same as we once were, you could still be an emperor. Varian didn't respond and began walking toward the red door. Death, you say? I've been chasing her all my life. If she's waiting behind this door, how can I walk away? With a chuckle, Varian opened the red door and walked in. Boom. You stupid bitch. Varian crashed into the floor, cracking it and sending dust into the air, clouding vision. I can make it very painful or very painless, depending on your words, an ethereal voice said as a silhouette materialized. It was a woman, only 5 feet tall and looking like a petite beauty that no one would associate with a deity. Why aren't you talking? She cocked her head and glanced at the rubble. With a curious expression, her feet left the ground. On her back, something impossible happened, a fire wing and an ice wing coalesced as if it were natural. With a single flap of her wings, the woman reached the rubble. She pointed a finger at it. Ka. The space around the rubble, mostly made of the floor's special tiles, tightened. Then it twisted and cracked. Shwa. The tough metal tiles were sliced apart, revealing the inside. Huh. The woman raised a brow in confusion. Varian was missing. Boom. A fist punched at her from behind, moving so fast it broke the sound barrier and created a vacuum before reaching her face. Just as it was about to hit her, the woman turned around and raised her palm to meet the fist. Boom. A blinding light of blue, red, and yellow filled the room as their forces clashed. Varian's fist, powered by his physical strength, telekinetic force, and augmented by lightning and space powers, clashed with her palm. The woman's palm shook violently as it met his fist. Her palm was covered in a protective layer of ice and fire, which, despite their opposing natures, worked in tandem. But even before the elemental barriers, Varian's fist encountered a space barrier. Coup! Varian's punch easily broke through the solid space and reached her fire-ice barrier. Whoosh! Kacha! The fire was blasted away, and the ice was shattered. By this point, Varian's fist had lost most of its momentum. But Varian wasn't disappointed. His opponent was an elementalist, and this physical attack was more than enough to severely injure her, if not kill her. But, you... Varian's eyes widened in disbelief as he felt a huge recoil from his fist. He flipped back and stabilized himself in mid-air with lightning wings. "Hee, you were fooled by me," the woman said, covering her mouth and chuckling. "You are a body awakener too?" Varian asked, his expression heavy. "But of course," the woman replied, lifting her head in pride. To show off, a huge circle formed behind her, equally divided by fire and ice. "And you have two elements," Varian clenched his fists. "Yep, I'm the best hybrid," the woman smirked, then her expression turned downcast. "But I'm not perfect. I only have two origins." Varian conjured a lightning spear silently and asked, "Since a single origin cannot awaken in two paths of the same avenue, your two origins each awakened in elemental paths, am I right?" "That is obvious. My first origin is fire and space, while my second is water and body," the woman said, patting her chest with a curl of her lips. "Of course, if I were a triple awakener with both origins, I'd be an awakener with 6 paths." Varian's eyebrows twitched. He got the answer he wanted, so he stealthily increased his grip on the lightning spear. "Hey, talk about ethics," the woman noticed his actions and waved her hand. Whoosh! The spinning circle behind her broke into fire and ice dragons, which lunged at Varian. Varian snapped his fingers, and the space around the fire and ice dragon solidified. TCH. The woman clicked her tongue, and the solidified space began to shake. Varian and the woman engaged in a tug-of-war over the space, while the ice and fire dragons continued their pursuit, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Soon, they were in front of him. The woman expected Varian to escape. After all, he had demonstrated body, telepathy, space, and lightning powers. "Even if you're a double dual awakener hybrid like me, you can't win against my skill," she declared. "I am the strongest level 6 Deva." As she spoke, her figure teleported right in front of Varian, and she punched out. The land beneath them caved in, and a huge shockwave shot out in all directions. Varian faced the fire and ice dragons along with the woman's fist. She expected him to despair. "Try to teleport. Then I'll disrupt the space and use the chaos to kill you." She licked her lips in anticipation. "You." Instead of despair, she saw a smirk on his face, a very, very confident smirk. A bad premonition arose in her heart, but she firmly denied it. "How can I lose? It's impossible. When my self was copied into this, Devas were just born. I was the strongest for my level. Unless he's the perfect hybrid, but even they couldn't do it. Did the Devas of the future really reach this level?" Complex emotions surged in her heart. But before she could process them, shock overwhelmed her entire being. Wah! Varian's left arm transformed into a huge brown branch and slapped the ice dragon. His right arm clenched, and the fire dragon seemed to be pulled apart by an invisible force, drowning in water. "Water?" The woman's eyes widened in utter disbelief. Varian's eyes met hers, and suddenly, a huge pain assaulted her mind. What in the hell is going on? The woman was more surprised by the telepathic nature of his attack than by the attack itself. Her cockiness vanished as if it had never existed, and she yelled, "How can anyone awaken in 2 branches of the same path? And you? How can you have body, telepathic, telekinetic, and morpher paths? Even the perfect hybrid can't do that." Varian shrugged nonchalantly as he kicked the air. His figure blurred, and he appeared in front of the woman. He raised his fist, combining all his powers. His mind attacks on her continued while his telekinetic path increased his speed. Lightning, water, and space augmented his fist, and he punched out. Boom! The force was so great it exceeded all limits of his level. With his continuous and rapid improvements, Varian found higher levels easier rather than more challenging. "You see, I'm no hybrid. Kacha, his punch broke through the woman's defenses and connected with her chest. Cracks appeared on her skin, and light poured out of her. As she was about to dissolve into specks of light, she asked, "Then, who are you?" "Someone way stranger and way more dangerous." Varian descended onto the floor. The room shone brightly, and the woman's corpse slowly disappeared. A purple orb shot out from the woman's body and reached Varian. Then, the room he entered through the red door began to shake violently. As if taking a cue, the 4 moons in the sky shot beams of light onto Varian. When the light touched him, it vanished. Whoosh! With each passing second, the light grew brighter. Varian was fine at first, but soon his head started to hurt. What the? Varian tried to move out of the light beams, but he seemed to be held by an invisible force. He glanced at the sources of the light, the moons, and his eyes widened. They are shrinking. Soon, the light grew so bright that even his ultrasenses couldn't see anything. Varian held on, but the pain reached an unbearable point, and he lost consciousness. When Varian woke up, he found himself not in the room where the final stage was conducted, but in the golden room. The blue door was still there, but the red door had disappeared. What the? Varian got back to his feet and looked around in scrutiny. The room's walls still emitted a golden light, and its floor was still sleek gold. "Hey!" Varian called out. "Esteemed one, what do you wish for?" The ethereal voice said, with a respect that was too much to ignore. It was almost as if it was addressing a hero, no, the greatest hero. "Why this sudden title?" Varian frowned. "And explain what the heck were those white lights that knocked me out?" "You passed the 10th stage that no one was supposed to pass. In fact, no one should be able to pass that test. If they did, it only means one thing. They have the power to take Devas back to the glory they don't even dare to dream of. Now, you'll be respected by all Devas. In fact, even princes can't compare to your glory." Wait. Varian held out his hand, motioning to pause. Devas were extinct. Varian didn't think they'd rise from the dead to pay respects to his esteemed self. So, he switched the topic. "What is this lost glory you're talking about?" "Esteemed one, this one is honored to be the subject of your humor," the voice responded, reverence overflowing in its tone. "I'm not joking," Varian rolled his eyes. "Seriously, what is the history of the Devas? Even though it is a piece of classified information, this one thought you'd have known. It seems you really immersed yourself in practice. Regarding your second question, this one's information only knows the history of Devas from the Golden Room's perspective. Even then, there are few things that this one is prohibited from talking much about. The ancient history of Devas is one such prohibition." Varian's expression grew worse. The voice seemed to panic and hurriedly said, But you can easily find them in the Imperial Library. Your current qualifications are more than sufficient to be received with the utmost respect." "Imperial Library?" Varian muttered and decided to check it out later. It seemed like a good idea. Not only would he find out about the Devas, but also about the system. "If I can know more about it, I can wield it better." Phew. The voice sighed in relief. Varian continued, "So, what can you tell me? I'd like to hear any information." It was a strange question, and the voice seemed caught off guard. "There is a lot of useless information." "I don't mind." "Then, this one shall begin." The ethereal voice began talking about the creation of the Golden Room. It was the place to determine the potential of Devas and allocate them appropriate resources. Since each emperor ruled for a few hundred years, there were typically 5 to 10 princes vying for the throne each time. However, over the years, this number dwindled. It eventually came down to 3, then slowly to 2, and finally to 1. Varian nodded lightly. The system told him that the Devas had sealed the room for their nefarious schemes. However, sealing it wasn't so easy. The cost was that they had to seal the aura of the entire solar system, leading to an irreversible catastrophic decline. By the time the Devas realized its effects, it was already too late. The last time someone passed the 9th stage was 6,500 years ago. Right. According to research, the Devis abruptly ended around 6,000 years ago. But from what this one heard, they couldn't become an emperor and only served as union chief. Oh. Varian's interest was piqued. What is the qualification to be an emperor? Since the standards are declining, we are no longer what we were. But still, the bare minimum is to be a celestial ranker. Varian wanted to argue but shifted the topic. Emperors only pass the 9th stage. What about my potential? What rank do you think I'd reach? He asked out of curiosity. Whether the answer was positive or negative, it wouldn't affect him much, or so he thought. Divine ranks. Huh. Varian was surprised by the term. What rank is that? Above celestials? It is beyond this one's comprehension. Varian tried asking more, but he didn't get any response other than, it is beyond this one's comprehension. All right, continue what you were saying, he waved his hand irritably. In recent times, no one reached stage 9, except one girl. No, it's 2, no, it's 1. The voice started muttering like a broken radio. Hey, I think you should get some maintenance. Apologies. For some reason, the record of that incident is blurry. Not even the time of the incident is clear. I'm pretty sure it's one of them. But the question is it Enigma or Sia? Varian shrugged. The voice continued, and Varian had to skip a lot of parts. In the end, he yawned and stretched his arms. Finally, he reached the last part. So, this is the history of the Golden Room. The pride of the Devis. The reason for our strength. Aren't there 7 more of you on every planet? Varian had a bad premonition. There is only one. Ah, shit. Varian cursed. I was thinking that was my ticket to celestial rank. Anyway, thanks for your answer. Now, I have some work to do. Varian's body floated in midair, and he sat cross-legged. His senses quickly found the purple orb in his body. Aura, release. High Awakener. It was a term that signified greatness, something only a very small segment of the population could experience in their lifetime. Geniuses who reached level 7 at the age of 27 or 28 were exceedingly rare. Most people were in their 30s and 40s when they hit level 7. Level 7 also marked the end of rapid advancements. From there on, any progress would typically take years, if not decades. In fact, reaching level 7 itself required tough conditions for each divine path. For example, Space Awakeners needed to reach the boundary. Elemental Awakeners needed to elementalize their bodies. Mind Awakeners needed to compress their mental power. None of these conditions were easy. But that's precisely why level 7 is viewed with such respect. It wasn't just plain respect, though. Once you reached level 7, the rigid laws would start to loosen, and accessible services would increase dramatically. Most importantly, they could feel a sense of security. Even if a war broke out, their family would be given priority in emergencies. For their own lives, the Federation would do its best to keep them safe. It was a life of nobility, but when the Federation needed them, they had to be willing to jump into the flames of war and risk their lives. Every person had different aspirations for reaching this level. For Varian, his long-term goal was to end the bloody war, while his short-term goal was to avoid embarrassing himself. He didn't realize how nervous he was becoming as he anticipated their reunion. I can't stay weaker than her. Taking a deep breath, Varian broke the purple orb. The orb first shrank to a point and then exploded outwards. Varian held his breath, watching what seemed like a mini Big Bang. Boom! The purple aura transformed into chi, prana, mental power, and various other aura derivatives. Each one was a different color, creating a beautiful and surreal picture. These aura derivatives flooded his body, each reaching its designated position. Then, golden lights appeared, directly reaching his mind. Varian began to gain insights into the divine paths, as if someone was revealing all the secrets, but that someone was his own mind. Finally, a white light appeared. It vanished as soon as it appeared, and Varian didn't know where it went. Unlike the golden or red orbs, the purple orb was different. While the aura and insights were more numerous and of higher quality, it couldn't be just that. The difference had to be the white light. What does it improve? It increases talent. The system replied unexpectedly. Oh. My talent is celestial grade. Can it improve it even further? Varian asked with a curious expression. No. It increases talent, but it's useless to you since it can't enhance your talent any further. Its grade is too low to help. Bruh, why did you get my hopes up? This system merely replied to your question, host. The white light does improve talent, but it can't improve yours. Then it's a total waste? Indeed. Varian struggled to think as the aura filled his body and insights filled his mind. Finally, he asked, can I give it to someone else? Can. I need to catch it first, right? The system has already caught it. This thing also has a special wisp that would make the host loyal to the Devis cause. Varian clenched his fist. Even though the system downplayed it, he knew what it was, mind manipulation. The thing he hated the most. Those fuckers. And here I thought they were being generous. The prizes at other stages are pure. Since you cleared the legendary 10th stage, it's in their interests to keep you dedicated to their cause. Varian's brows furrowed, and then he recalled the white light and the vanishing moons. There was another prize. Does it have any sneaky things? No. This system ensures your safety from such activities since it has a personal enmity with Devis. What do you? Never mind, we'll talk later. As the insights flooded his mind, Varian couldn't talk any longer. He began to try out all the insights he had gained. Zap! It began with lightning. Lightning dragons coiled around his body, blinking in and out of existence. With each passing second, his lightning mana began to integrate more deeply with his blood, flesh, and bones. It wasn't a simple connection, but something far deeper. Soon, golden lines appeared on Varian's skin. His veins were now filled with lightning mana. His skin paled and began to glow. His blood was now full of lightning mana, followed by his muscles, and eventually, his bones. After a few minutes, Varian's entire body shone with a golden light. His eyes were still closed, but if he opened them, they would also be emitting golden light. As the final piece of the puzzle, Varian's skin was deeply integrated with lightning mana and turned gold. Swish! Varian's body began to blur. The air around him started to heat up, and the hot air passed right through his body. Varian's eyebrows twitched, and a ball of water appeared in midair. It reached him and hit his chest in the blink of an eye. But instead of splashing and injuring him, it passed right through him. And when it passed through all the lightning in his body and emerged on the other side, it was already half evaporated. Pop! With a plop, Varian's lightning mana finally broke the bottleneck and reached level 7. His lightning sense expanded many times over, and the surge of power that he felt was the greatest he had ever experienced, intoxicating Varian. Zop! Varian pointed his hand toward the sky. A beam of lightning shot out from his palm and exploded with a bright golden light. Boom! The shockwaves from the explosion were powerful enough to injure level SXS. If they were too close, even high-level SXS would be injured. Varian's lips curled up, and he threw his head back, laughing. Ha 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 ha. Finally. The battle maniac in him wanted to test his new powers immediately. No, he wanted to fight, and most of all, he wanted to fight the princes. Ha! Calming his mind, Varian focused on the next path. A surge of prana flooded his heart, and he transformed into his tree man form. Like any level 6, it was only a partial transformation. Unlike Julius, who completely turned into the Golden Titan, Varian could only transform parts of his body at a time. Now, his arms turned into brown branches, and his legs turned into trunks. Varian's height rose to 3 meters. Then it began. His prana started to travel through the areas he hadn't transformed, and slowly, they began to wriggle. Whoosh! Whoosh! His waist slowly turned into a greenwood. His shoulders, back, and neck followed. In a few minutes, except for his face, Varian's body was entirely a tree. As Varian held his breath, his neck slowly began to transform, and finally, his head also vanished. A large tree with many branches, a single trunk, and quite a few roots stood where he had previously been. Varian waved his branches. They extended like whips and slapped the air. Paw! Paw! The air exploded, and shockwaves rippled through the room. But Varian frowned. This was much weaker than the lightning attacks. Attack isn't great, so what about defense? Varian held out one of his branches, which stretched a few meters into the distance. Then a lightning bolt appeared and smashed it. Ouch! Varian clicked his tongue as he felt a burning pain, but to his surprise, except for a few burns, his branch was mostly intact. Defense is good, HM. Next, Varian tried to move. His roots wriggled, and his trunk leaned forward. Whoosh! In an instant, he appeared on the other side of the room. What the? The speed would be the best among level success. Only level success. To a level 7, this speed was terrible. Speed is a joke. Varian cursed. Some Morpher paths are usually weaker than others, but this is too much, okay? Shaking his head, he was about to transform back when he noticed a cool sensation in the damaged branch. The blue leaves on his branches began to glow, and a special warmth reached his injured part. In just a blink of an eye, his injury was healed. Whoa! Varian was surprised at this monstrous healing speed. Even though the injury wasn't severe, it would take at least a few minutes for even a level 7 body awakener to heal it. Even if he took a potion, it would still take around 30 to 40 seconds. But this, it healed him in the blink of an eye. Healing, wonderful. Varian's face lit up. This was his planty's specialty. The trade-off was a poor attack and speed. But Varian was more than willing to pay the price. Unlike potions, this healing ability would increase with each sublevel and level. Not only that, it's at the same range, if not better than heal fighters. Varian compared his own healing to theirs and nodded. After reaching level 7, the body awakener paths diverged once again. Enhanced Superhuman, essentially, Superhuman is enhanced on steroids. Enhanced Extreme, these awakeners have base attributes lower than Superhuman, but one property is much higher. For example, an Extreme Awakener might have lower defense and attack than a Superhuman, but much higher speed. These types tend to be assassins and informants. Then came the other two divisions. Controller Shapeshifters, unlike controllers, who could only heighten one attribute, shapeshifters could heighten multiple attributes. For instance, when attacking, they could increase their strength and speed according to the ratio they preferred. This precision was crucial in higher-level battles. Controller heal fighters, these were somewhat equivalent to Extreme Awakeners whose healing reached a very high level. They start off as the weakest among body awakeners, even weaker than shapeshifters in their base stats. But heal fighters could push themselves again and again to reach great heights. In the end, they could even end up stronger than any other body awakener. This was all made possible due to their healing properties. Their healing was the best of any path. Now, Varian's healing powers were as good, if not better, than a heal fighter's. This is broken, Varian sighed. Heal fighters' healing and superhuman attributes, it's going to be ridiculous. Now, he could push himself further and further. He wouldn't need many potions either. Varian was looking forward to battles. But the bubbling aura inside his body reminded him that the task wasn't over yet. He sat back down and focused. Mind paths, telekinetic and telepath. The mind power in the purple orb was equally split between these two. The mind power in Varian's brain began to grow. But instead of expanding, it started to compress. What was once like an invisible gas now began to condense into a thicker, colorful cloud. Schwa. At the same time, the telekinetic power in Varian's body rose and began to compress. Within a few minutes, Varian's eyes shot open, and a blue light flashed in them before returning to normal. With a single thought, an invisible force took the shape of a knife and slashed at the floor. Schwa. The tiles broke apart, and a huge crack appeared on the floor. A bit weaker than my lightning, but considering its dexterity, it's as good. Varian rubbed his chin and nodded in appreciation. Then, his expression turned serious, and he closed his eyes. Whoosh. His telepathic, no, psychic power reached his palace of memories. He quickly arrived at the place he visited every day. The gray fog, the foreign psychic power blocking his memories of Sia. Varian observed it and compared it to his own. The grayness was too rich. Once again, Varian was sure that this gray fog, this psychic power, belonged to Sovereign Creo. That son of a bitch. Varian cursed wantonly before refocusing on the gray fog. He had discovered this during the solar banquet. It had been a few weeks since then, and he had been trying to chip away at the gray fog bit by bit every day. As a level 6 telepath, he could only do so much. However, since he did it every day, the progress was visible. 90% fog left. Yes, he had asked the system to calculate the progress. It didn't help much most of the time, so he decided to use it when he could. It took me so many days to clear up 10%. Varian sighed, remembering his own joy as the number dipped bit by bit. Now, I'm a level 7. With a smile, his psychic power rushed to the edge of the fog. The gray fog was both of higher quality and quantity than his own psychic power. But it was ownerless and only did its job mindlessly. In contrast, while weaker than the gray fog, Varian's psychic power moved according to a clever strategy. It focused all its power on a single point of the gray fog and, using the numbers advantage, it started nibbling away at the edges of the gray fog. The gray fog fought back, but only the part that was being attacked. So, Varian's psychic power was able to win, albeit suffering some hits. With each nibble, bits and pieces of memories began to fill Varian's mind. They were at the beginning of their second year of high school. The past of the 16-year-old Varian now resumed. Every day, he went to school with Sia. They bickered and fought, but every time, they came back together. Sia began to grow more popular due to her power and looks. Meanwhile, Varian grew increasingly desolate as he kept failing to awaken. Varian thought he would turn bitter at the differences, but his past self's relationship with Sia only grew stronger. Sometimes, he even talked about his own insecurities with her, their growing differences, his fear of losing her, how he felt about being compared to her at school, and more. Sia remained supportive. Even though she didn't show it, she fought anyone who spoke ill of him and got injured many times. But as she always did, she hid those injuries. Unbeknownst to her, the 16-year-old Varian knew what she was hiding. He didn't expose her, so they lived caring for each other in an uncaring world. Varian increased his efforts, and so did Sia. As his memories unfolded, he reached a special day. Pervert. Sia glared at Varian, who was standing in her room, staring intensely at her bra and panties in his hands. No, this isn't what it looks like. I promise. The 16-year-old Varian raised his hands and said with an anxious expression. Sia raised a brow and crossed her arms. Then pray tell, what is it? It is. Varian opened his mouth with a confident expression but suddenly stopped. Sia gritted her teeth and walked up to him. She stretched her hand to grab her underwear, but unexpectedly, Varian stepped back and hid them behind his back. You. Sia's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. I need them for a very important thing, Varian said with a serious expression, but Sia wasn't buying it. Important? She gritted her teeth and imagined him doing her underwear dirty. Arg. You pervert. Like an angry lioness, she lunged at him. Varian, better trained, jumped onto her body, rolled down, and ran out of her room and out of the house. It was a classic escape. "It's not what you think it is," his voice echoed. Sia punched her pillow and yelled, "I know exactly what it is for." Silence filled the house as Varian didn't return even after an hour. Sia was still angry, but not as angry as before. In fact, she was more embarrassed. So, she sat on the sofa and tried to watch something to distract her mind. But she couldn't forget that image. The image of Varian looking at her underwear so seriously, as if he was facing a mortal enemy. Before she knew it, she was blushing madly from her neck to her ears. Sia drew her knees to her chest and buried her face between them. "I know teenagers and hormones. But seriously, I didn't think Varian would do that." As she thought more, it seemed normal. Varian was a regular guy, after all. And even she couldn't deny that she looked beautiful. "Yeah, it's normal teenage stuff," she told herself, looking at the closed main door. "But this idiot. Even if you're doing anything, do it at home. You ran off somewhere with my, damn it, prepared to starve tonight. You're not getting any dinner." She gnashed her teeth. She finished her dinner and looked at the empty dishes. She glanced at the closed door again and bit her lip. She went back to the kitchen. "Yes, I just want to eat more today. That's it." But as she sat down at the dining table again, she slapped her forehead. "My diet. I can't eat anymore." Then, she looked at the freshly cooked dishes and shook her head. "I can't throw them away, can I?" Saying this, she went back to her room. "He can't train with an empty stomach. But I'm not letting him off the hook. Until he apologizes, I'll be cold to him. Yep. He can be horny, not a pervert." With that, Sia went to sleep, or rather, she should have. But she ended up waiting for him the entire night. The next morning, Sia checked on Varian's room. He was sprawled on his bed, deep in sleep. Huh. She noticed his hands were covered in special bandages. These were rather expensive, and he always used them sparingly. Sometimes, his training led to severe injuries, but Varian insisted on not using these bandages. She slowly touched his hands, and her brows knitted together in a frown. "The skin on his whole palm, no, even some flesh is gone." Sia gritted her teeth and looked at Varian, who was calmly sleeping. She felt an urge to beat him. "Didn't you say you'd take care of yourself? Then why?" "Huh." Varian rubbed his eyes and looked at her groggily before he suddenly stiffened. "Care to explain your honorable deeds?" Sia said coldly. "Training, I was a bit careless, huh," Varian answered with a forced smile and ran out of the house. "I got a part-time job. I'll be late." Varian. For the next 7 days, Sia saw him with new bandages every day. Despite the bandages healing his old injuries in a day, he seemed to be getting new injuries each day. Each time she asked him about it, he gave one reason or another. It wasn't just his injuries, his complexion had also turned pale. On the 3rd day, she insisted on joining his practice and overseeing it. Her intention was clear, to prevent his injuries. He declined vehemently. When she asked him about his part-time job, where he was spending most of his evening, he just gave vague answers. Why is he doing this? Sia paced back and forth in her home, clenching her fists. He was hiding something from her. Perhaps a lot. She didn't want to pry. But how was she supposed to rest easy when he was coming home with more injuries and a worse complexion? Creak. The door slowly opened, and Varian stepped in. Sia wanted to yell, but seeing him, she quickly ran over and supported him from falling. Varian's face was as pale as snow, and his arms hung loosely, with bandages wrapped all around his fingers and fists. "What in the heavens happened?" she asked in a trembling voice. Varian didn't answer. Instead, he stiffly tightened his neck and looked at her worried face. With a weak smile, he asked, "You're going to Earth's Defense Academy, right?" Sia held him carefully and walked him to his room. She didn't answer his question. He already knew the answer. Our city college isn't good for you, Sia, Varian said again, his voice low but firm. He seemed tired but satisfied. Sia couldn't understand what was going on in his head. But she knew what was going on in hers. You think I can go to the Defense Academy with you being like this? Hiding secret after secret from me? Sia gently laid him on the bed and said in a cold tone, I'm telling Amanda. I'll also check with your part-time job's employer. He better have a good excuse for your injuries. No, even if he has a good excuse, he's going to regret it. Sia's tone grew colder. Hee, Varian chuckled. Don't laugh, idiot. Sia pinched his cheek. Bringing her face closer to his, she said in a threatening tone, I'm not leaving until you tell me what the heck you were doing. Did you fight a gang? But our district doesn't have any. Then did you fight our school's bullies? Tell their names, and I'll take care of them. But you're going to tell me everything, got it? Sia realized Varian had fallen asleep. She wanted to wake him up and ask, but seeing his tired face, she sighed. When she glanced at his injuries, anger surged in her. There was no way Varian could be this injured from a part-time job and training. She'd get her answers and get revenge on those responsible for his condition. Sia looked out of the window and saw the moon. With military bases all around, it was bright red. I wonder if I can ever visit my birthplace? When Sia woke up the next day, Varian was gone. She tried calling and texting him, but there was no response. Filled with worry, she decided to approach the authorities to file a missing person report. Then, she found a small holographic letter in his room. Today is the last day. There is just some work remaining. I'll be back by evening. Sia took a deep breath and suppressed her emotions. She was both worried and enraged. With a cold face, she attended school. As expected, Varian skipped today's class. Gotcha. Sia's desk cracked, and the class suddenly fell silent. I'm sorry. Continue, she said in a neutral tone. Her expression must have been terrifying, not even the teacher looked her in the eye. Her fellow classmates moved 3 feet away from her. As the classes rolled on, Sia was avoided like the plague. It didn't help that she ignored the first few who tried to speak to her. Sia didn't feel any regret for her behavior. As time passed, she began to have scary thoughts. What if Varian was in danger? What if he was severely injured? After the bus dropped her in the neighborhood, she walked back home alone. It felt strange. They were always together, but now... I'm fine, Sia shook her head and reached home. After a quick shower, she threw herself into studying. Night fell, and Sia closed her books. She wasn't in the mood for dinner. In fact, she was on the verge of exploding with anger. Where are you? It's 11. She bit her lip and stared at the clock. As each minute passed, her worries only increased. If he's not back by 12, I'm reporting this. She kept staring at the clock, and it finally hit 12. Sia dashed to the door. But before she could touch it, it slid open, revealing Varian. His shirt had small cuts, his hair was disheveled, and his hands were covered in new bandages. It seemed like all the bandages were used up, as he had only tied a few strips of cloth around other injuries. The blood from those injuries had soaked through the cloth, staining it red. Heavens! Sia turned to rush for the medical kit, but Varian grabbed her hand. She felt a warm liquid touch her hand. It was his blood. It flowed down her fingertips, into her palm, and splashed onto her feet. We can talk later. First, your injuries must be. Happy birthday, he said with a bright smile and, despite his injured hands, presented her with 2 connected figurines. Sia covered her mouth with her hands and looked at them with wide eyes. The 2 figurines, Varian and Sia, were dressed in their casual clothes. The black-haired boy and the brown-haired girl stood together, both with bright smiles. It was a smile of joy, companionship, and naivety. Their faces, clothes, and even their expressions were all too real. With current technology, others might have quickly judged that they were made by a bot. But Sia knew better. She recognized the metal, heart steel. It was a metal that could only be carved with aura. Usually, it wasn't that difficult. Even level 1s could easily provide the necessary aura. But Varian. How? She asked, her voice choked. He didn't have any aura. He hadn't awakened. How could he have provided the aura? Aura permeates all things. Even if I don't have aura for myself, it's present in my body. So, I used it, Varian said with a grin, as if it were no big deal. The using meant he had to use his own blood to bring out that tiny bit of aura for the carving. Heart steel was a sensitive metal, the slightest change would ruin everything. And Varian, he literally had to use his blood and flesh to carve this gift. Don't think too much. Varian smiled and waved his hand. But he seemed to forget he didn't have the special bandages, so blood spilled from his wounds. A droplet of blood fell on Sia's cheek. Sia touched the blood and lowered her head, covering her face. But tears were already spilling between her fingers. Now she understood everything, why he needed her clothes, why he suddenly took a part-time job, and the continuous bandages. Hey, it's easy, okay? Just some work. No, it wasn't easy like Varian said. His face was scarily pale from losing so much blood to carve the figurine. Sia's heart beat faster and faster as overwhelming emotions drowned her. Why was she feeling this? Why? She choked, leaning on his chest and letting her tears run free. Varian raised his hand to caress her hair but, seeing the blood on his hands, he put them down. For your next birthday, you'll be in college. From then on, you'll be busy. After that, any birthday you have will be on some other planet, with your friends and colleagues. His voice was warm, and his gentle words stirred her heart. Sia cried harder. I won't go, I won't go. Varian shook his head and said gently, this again? I don't want you to sacrifice your future for me. If you do that, I'll live my life in guilt. Sia buried her face in his chest and didn't answer. I'll be the happiest to see you rise. But, from next year, Sia won't be the only Sia I know. She'll be a big awakener, have many friends, and bravely pursue her dreams. With each passing year, the distance between us will only grow. Even if I try my best, without power, I can't help you much. Varian gritted his teeth but quickly forced himself to smile. He held Sia's hand, which was holding the figurines, and lifted it. So, now, I gave you the best gift I can. He pointed to the two figurines. They are made of heart steel. My figurine has my aura, which will shine on your birthday every year. It will carry my wishes to you, no matter where you are. He hugged her tightly and said, even if we grow physically distant, I want our bond to last in our hearts. Sia. Varian opened his eyes and looked at himself. He was no longer holding her. He couldn't feel her soft, comforting back, nor could he smell her pleasant perfume. I won't go. I won't go. Her cries echoed in his mind. Yet, you went away. Varian took a deep breath to calm his agitated emotions, but his cheeks were already wet. Boom. Varian lost control of his powers and accidentally used his telekinetic abilities on the walls. A huge dent formed in the golden wall. After a minute, Varian calmed himself down. He noticed the wall and muttered, level 7 in the telekinetic path. It is macrokinetic now. Then, he focused his mind inside his memory palace. The fog at one of the edges had significantly decreased. 88% fog left. Varian was surprised. From the previous 90%, it was now down to 88%. 2% in one session. Since he had exhausted his psychic power completely, he could repeat this process one more time today. Any more, and he would risk injuring his mind due to overexertion. 4% per day. It will take 22.5 days to remove the whole fog, Varian muttered, his expression turning sour. He and Enigma entered the ruins on the evening of the 30th. Now, it was already the 31st of Tryon month. The ruins would remain open only until the 45th. Sia avoided him when she learned he hadn't recovered all his memories. If he met her on the 45th and told her his memories still hadn't returned, she might run away. And why is she so obsessed with this? Varian sighed. In the corner of his mind, there was a possibility. No. It was an answer. But his subconscious firmly rejected it. Save Sia. Those were his mother's last words. Save her from what? The most likely possibility was the fire wolf. His mother didn't know that Sia was also a gravity awakener and thought of her only as a mind awakener. So, she might have asked the physically fit variant to help the physically vulnerable Sia. But there was another possibility. Pop. Pop. A plopping sound and a strange sensation pulled Varian back from his thoughts. The muscles in his body began to expand and contract, as if air were being pumped in and out. The chi in Varian's body rose exponentially, like a raging tide engulfing a forest. The chi enveloped his blood, organs, and bones, down to the last fiber of his body. At a microscopic level, the chi began to link with the cells. In levels 1 to 3, chi merely coated the body, improving physical performance. In levels 4 to 6, chi coated the cells and amplified their output at a cellular level. Now, the same chi seeped into the cells. Boom. 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 It was as if 1,000 bombs went off in his body. Varian trembled violently as a terrifying pain coursed through him. Plop. 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 It started with his left foot, throbbing as if about to explode before calming abruptly. Next was his right foot, followed by his calves, knees, and all the way up to his neck. Finally, his head buzzed, and Varian felt like it was about to explode. Veins popped up on his forehead, his eyes turned red, his vision blurred, and the world went out of focus. Next, his hearing began to fade. The whisper of the wind, the throbbing of his heart, the breathing of his lungs, all became silent. The smell was the last to go. Whether it was the smell of his own blood or the unique scent that wafted from the golden walls, reminiscent of an old jewelry shop, both scents vanished. The throbbing intensified. Varian's vision grew dark. He could see, smell, or hear nothing. Within moments, he also lost his senses of touch and taste. Varian remained in a darkness that would instill fear in most men, a terrifying darkness where you could do nothing but exist, unable to move, see, or even feel your own self. Varian's consciousness drifted in this darkness, like a boat tossed by a raging storm, searching for a harbor. Time passed indeterminately as his consciousness continued to seek a way out of the unending darkness. After an unknown period, he found it. In the distance, a ray of light appeared. Varian's consciousness rushed toward it, and the light gradually became clearer. It was a tunnel. As he entered, the darkness exploded, and the world came into existence. Varian opened his eyes, his jaw dropping in shock. He saw nothing extraordinary, just the same room, but his perception had changed dramatically. From level 3 to level 4, his vision had improved from 480p to 4K. Now, it was 8K, no, 32K. And it was incredibly flexible. Varian could see the finest details in the room, zoom in and out with ease, and even see for almost 100 miles with high precision. The improvement was astounding. His hearing, smell, touch, and taste had all soared, inundating his brain with a vast amount of sensory information at every moment. Thankfully, his brain seemed to have improved to handle this massive load. So, Varian didn't feel any burden despite upgrading to a higher quality worldview. Senses are all well and good, but what I really need to test in the body path is. Varian disappeared and reappeared in front of a golden wall. My strength. Pulling his hand back, he clenched his fist and punched out. Boom. Even before his fist hit the wall, the air exploded, and shockwaves spread throughout the room. Bam! A deep fist imprint formed on the wall, and cracks began to spread from it. A bright light flashed, and the wall repaired itself. Varian's lips curled up, and he kicked the ground. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, he was high in the sky, miles above the ground. The cold wind traveling at high speeds hit him, but it felt like a gentle breeze. Varian saw the world below him. Even though everything surrounding the golden room was still completely dark, the darkness itself seemed clearer now. In a few seconds, Varian returned to the room, easily preventing a crash using his telekinetic power. Now, there was only one path left. Space. Varian's body disappeared. Space. It is continuous, mysterious, and dangerous. Outer space is where the solar system and the world humans know reside. Thus, one cannot fault the general populace for thinking inner space also teems with life, perhaps even a life form higher than their own. This is one of the most sought-after topics in the scientific community. However, unlike other pursuits, the answer to this question relies not on the ingenuity of scientists and their breakthroughs, but on the space awakeners, specifically the first celestial space awakener. Only a celestial space awakener can enter inner space by crossing the layer space, which is full of chaotic space currents and appears distinctively gray against the blackness of outer space. This layer space is the threshold every awakener intending to reach level 7 must enter, and it is the space Varian is about to enter. Whoosh! As his body slid in from outer space, Varian reached the boundary, the gap between outer space and inner space. His space power circulated quickly, and in the blink of an eye, he moved from the edge of outer space to the edge of inner space, the layer space. Looking at the gray expanse, Varian held his breath. Blue Flash had carried him to the layer space before, and he had trained there. So, it was not a new experience for him. He had survived the dangerous space currents as a level 6 and was confident he could do the same as a level 7. However, to become a level 7 space awakener, he needed to develop a space body. This could only be achieved when his body developed a strong sense of affinity to space. Currently, due to his other paths, his affinity was not where it needed to be. This same issue was also faced by other space awakeners who had 2 or 3 paths. Reportedly, they took more time than usual to establish this space body. Varian didn't want to spend so much time, so he took a better route. System, turn off all my other paths, he said. With those words, Varian entered the layer space. Whoosh! 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 Fierce gray winds hit his body from all directions. With each swirl, the space twisted and cracked. Varian stood in the seemingly endless grayness, taking the dangers head-on. His space power seeped out and formed a protective layer around him. However, it didn't end there, it also began to interact with the dangerous space currents. Sometimes, it was sliced apart by the sharp space cracks, other times, it was blasted into pieces by the unstable space currents. But it surely started to gain a sense of connection. Ka. Ka. Kacha. The space currents frequently broke through Varian's space barrier and struck him. Blood gushed from his wounds as the space currents rushed in. Varian calmly set up another barrier and continued. In a few moments, the space barrier broke down more than a dozen times. Technically, he was still a level 6 space awakener and should have been seriously injured and depleted when the space barrier broke the second time. But due to the purple orb, he had a lot of space power. So, he put it to good use and continued to stay in the layer space. Whoosh! He couldn't stay there forever and was teleported back to outer space, to the golden room. But Varian immediately went back to the layer space and continued. Whoosh! 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 The back and forth travel continued. With each trip, Varian's body began to emit a silvery gray light. During the 20th time, Varian's body in layer space shone with a gray light. Boom! Varian's body opened like an empty reservoir, drinking all the space power within him and the layer space. Unlike the usual state where space power existed separately in his body, a fundamental change occurred. It began to integrate with his body, from organ to organ, droplet to droplet, nerve to nerve, and cell to cell. Space power rushed in, and in the blink of an eye, Varian's body turned completely gray, then silvery, before returning to normal. Huh. Varian stood in the layer space, and at some point, the space barrier dissipated. Contrary to his expectations, the space currents didn't harm him much. They still stung a bit, and there were a few cuts, but that was all. Varian looked at his hands in confusion. Is this? He clenched his fist, and the space around it tightened. Varian didn't need to make any effort for this to happen. It felt natural, as if the space power had always been a part of his body, like his blood. Varian's lips curled into a smile, and he punched out. Kacha, the space shook, and the chaotic winds in the region were blown away. Whoosh, Varian returned to the golden room. He looked up at the space, and just like that, he was 100 miles above the room. It felt as natural as breathing, as if his whole body was not only accustomed to space but even made for it. Snap, Varian snapped his fingers, and the space around him began to crack. Asterisk Ka. Ka. Kacha, asterisk a huge, silvery crack spread across the sky, like the mouth of a mythological creature. Varian looked at the space crack and clenched his fist. Boom, the sky shook. Everything in the area of the crack vanished as if it had never existed. Wonderful, Varian smiled and looked below. His spatial awareness reached the golden room, and he lowered his foot. His foot landed on the room's floor as Varian teleported effortlessly. System, unlock my paths. Varian's senses returned to a superhuman level. I still need some time to get used to this. It feels like I'm watching a lifelong high-quality movie. As he was about to check his status, the water mana in his body stirred. Oh right. Varian clicked his tongue and channeled his water mana. Compared to the requirements for level 7 advancement, this was child's play. In a matter of seconds, Varian assimilated the water mana from the purple orb, digested the insights, and progressed in his water path. Status: Superhuman level 7, 0/10,000. Space level 7, 0/10,000. Lightning level 7, 0/10,000. Plantifighter level 7, 0/10,000. Psychic level 7, 0/10,000. Macrokinetic level 7, 0/10,000. Water level 6, 3/6. As expected, his body path chose the balanced superhuman route rather than the extreme, unbalanced path. His planty path also opted for personal combat over creating and commanding smaller plants. Similarly, his telepathy chose the psychic route over the technocrat path. Finally, since he didn't focus on micro-control with his telekinetic power, it was natural that he had the macrokinetic path. Varian clenched his fists. He had never been stronger. With 6 low-level 7s, what was the extent of his strength? I should find out. Varian's body blurred, and he appeared at the exit. With grace, he left the golden room. The space twisted and fluctuated for a brief moment. Varian appreciated the finesse of this space entry. It had been thousands of years since its construction. Yet, here it was, working perfectly after its creators were long gone. Swish. Hide my aura, Varian said. So, who won the bet? A serious voice sounded. Outside the gate, 30 princes and princesses gathered. They had bet on their performances. I cleared the 7th stage, a woman with long, soft platinum hair smirked. A red orb appeared in her hand before quickly disappearing. Wah. Really? Holy shit. I couldn't take it and quit. Wait, you could quit? Varian seemed to have selectively forgotten about it. Guys, this is our Earth's ruins. Did any of you clear stage 7? A prince from Earth asked his companions. They all shook their heads, looking dispirited. I was very close to ending my opponent, but he sacrificed both his limbs and was about to kill me. I quit, a man with brown hair sighed. Told you. Earth is very close to Neptune, but we are obviously a step ahead, Princess Rhea smirked. For a single path awakener, the 7th stage is ultimate. She shrugged and turned to the Venus princes and princesses. You were expecting dark horses, right? Dark horses don't appear ever. Her words abruptly stopped as the golden gate began to glow. It shone with a golden light. Oh. Someone else entered? Princess Rhea raised a brow. The light indicated the stage they cleared. Stage 3, no, Stage 4, wait. The gate's golden glow grew brighter and brighter before turning light red. What? Princess Rhea gawked in shock. Someone else cleared Stage 7? She quickly turned around and checked everyone. The rest did the same. But everyone had the same confused expression. They were all here, so, who was inside? The gate's glow turned dark red, and the group of elite geniuses took a step back. Then it turned deep scarlet, and everyone gulped. There's no way this is true. Princess Rhea muttered. The gate turned purple, and a man appeared in front of them. There was a silence on the golden hill, a silence of shock. The princes and princesses had reached at least 4 stages and received golden lights for themselves. Some even crossed 6 stages and obtained a dark golden light. Only one among them cleared the 7th stage and received a pale red light. In the brief yet remarkable history of mankind, there were instances of dark red and even scarlet lights. Both of these were achieved by triple awakeners, low-level individuals who were refined to the peak by experts. When they received their rewards, everyone was pleasantly surprised. Then, the Federation poured their wealth into another set of triple awakeners to clear the 10th stage. But despite expending vast resources, countless personnel, and a great deal of time, the 10th stage was never cleared. It gradually became a legend. Now, that very legend was broken by the living legend standing before them. The man, in his 20s, had brown hair and blue eyes. Despite clearing the legendary stage, he didn't seem tired, much less injured. Senior. Princess Rhea called out in a humble tone. The princes and princesses behind her also leaned forward, looking at him eagerly while maintaining a respectful posture. It's you all. Varian raised a brow at the group of princelings. While he didn't show it, he was surprised. Not by their presence, but by his own reaction to it. These princes and princesses were all peak level 7s. Arguably, he was still weaker than them. But he could sense that they weren't capable of killing him. He couldn't defeat them yet, but he could certainly escape. This was because these princes were in their 30s and almost 2 decades older than him. If it were a newly promoted prince, Varian was sure he could overwhelm him. Heck, even if it were a typical level 7 prince, Varian was confident he could overwhelm him. But these people, especially the platinum-haired woman, were significantly stronger than him. Ahem. Princess Rhea coughed to adjust her posture and asked in a polite tone, "We saw the purple light. Did you clear the 10th stage?" "No," Varian replied with a straight face. "Huh." Everyone was taken aback. "I was fiddling with the gate's lighting. It seems to be working pretty well." Varian nodded to himself, as if appreciating his own work. "Huh, you have a good sense of humor." Prince Cain from Earth stepped forward and looked Varian in the eye. "This guy, he's Master's apprentice." Varian recognized him. Prince Cain had a short but welcoming conversation with him during the solar banquet. "Senior, as the future pillars of humanity, this is a truly joyous matter for us. So, we request you to give us more insight into what happened." Prince Cain took another step forward. Varian frowned and didn't answer. "We aren't trying to be hostile, we just want to ensure your identity or at least that you aren't hostile to the Federation." Prince Cain raised his hands and said. He meant what he said, but no matter how well-intentioned he was, it was in direct conflict with Varian's desires. "We know all the level 7 and level 8 princes," Prince Cain said slowly. "You can just reveal your special code, and everything will be clear." The princes and princesses straightened their backs at his words. Indeed, this was too strange. Since he had cleared the 10th stage, he should definitely be at least a peak level 7. But they hadn't seen any prince with this face. To avoid offending the other party, they asked for a special code. Every prince had a special device that generated a unique code every 24 hours. This code was highly complex and virtually unhackable. The purpose of this code was to maintain anonymity while proving one's identity as a prince. This was done to avoid favoritism and discrimination, and to prevent drawing hatred to princes when they undertook dangerous missions and offended powerful enemies. Varian crossed his arms and looked at them with a judging expression, as if he was watching a pathetic show. The princes and princesses were enraged by his behavior, but it also prevented them from acting rashly, which was exactly what Varian intended. Now, how the hell do I get out of here without making a scene? Varian began to rummage through his memories for any potential solution. Your standing as a prince will be greatly elevated. You will be seen as the next sovereign, no, even higher than that, Prince Cain continued. Varian didn't budge. Just the special code, senior. Prince Cain pressed further, and the princes and princesses began to feel suspicious. It was only a code, not the real identity. Then why? Are you not even a level 7? Princess Rhea suddenly asked. The air stilled, and everyone's eyes locked onto Varian. Yes, that was indeed a possibility. If he wasn't a level 7, he wouldn't have the code, and they might not even know him. The princes and princesses stepped forward, clenching their fists. Unless he proved his affiliation with a human-friendly power, like the Adventure Guild or military, they were ready to attack. There was a high chance he wasn't a level 7, so it would be an easy victory. Level 7? Varian smirked and glanced at the 30 young men and women. Kids, why don't you all try to gauge my level? Feel free to run your senses. Varian raised his arms in invitation. An ominous premonition rose in everyone's hearts, but they still spread their senses to him and checked his level. As a result, I can't feel anything. It's blank. He should either be unawakened or much stronger than us. I think we offended someone we shouldn't. As they muttered in shock, Varian stepped forward. Everyone flinched and stepped back, except Prince Cain and Princess Rhea. Varian smiled at them. I'm not a prince, but this should give you answers. He snapped his fingers, and a badge shot out to Cain and Rhea. Their senses quickly scanned it, and their jaws dropped. This. Rhea and Cain were stunned, while the others stared at the badge with wide eyes. Varian waved his hand, and the badge disappeared. Then, he calmly walked down the hill. His parting words lingered in the air. This is a secret mission. Only report this to your upper echelon. Phew. I fooled them. Varian sighed in relief after he was a few hundred miles away from the Golden Hill. He looked at the metal badge in his palm and shook his head. When he revealed the process of a dual awakener becoming a sovereign, Bali gave him this badge. If what you said really works, if I really become a sovereign, then I'll fulfill any 3 favors you seek, as long as it doesn't go against humanity and my personal dignity. Since this badge held such heavy meaning, Varian judged it to be one of Bali's personal symbols that couldn't be copied. If things got heated, I'd have run away. Varian shrugged nonchalantly. He would have gotten injured for sure, though. This was a clever decision. As for whether his action would inconvenience Bali, the next time they see him, he'll be a sovereign. TSK, I'm really looking forward to his reaction. Varian laughed. After passing through a safe route cutting through a great forest, he checked his map. Now then, what next? He quickly decided. In Triad Ruins, far away from Varian, in a valley covered by fog, a group of 10 men and women were staring nervously at a huge stone platform. A young man with blonde hair sat cross-legged on it, exuding a sense of peace, but underneath that was a raging ambition. Charles Xander opened his eyes, and green light shot out of them. Boom! The aura in the surroundings began to riot as he started to give off an incredible pressure. Roar. With a guttural roar, Charles jumped high into the sky. Pop. 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 Strange sounds, as if bones were smashing and muscles rubbing against each other, echoed through the air. Bang. A huge body landed on the ground, and a cloud of dust filled the valley. A woo. An ancient howl, filled with dignity and power, echoed throughout. Charles Xander had completely transformed. This could only mean one thing. Young master, he really digested that treasure in a week. A woman, seemingly in her 40s, covered her mouth and murmured. Shocked, she forgot to control her level 8 aura. Asterisk whoosh. Whoosh, asterisk it quickly swept away the dust, revealing the giant wolf. It was 9 meters long, as big as a car, and 2 meters tall as a human. Boom, the tail swiped through the air, and just like that, the wind exploded, sending shockwaves that shattered rocks and stones into gravel. Oh whoa. The giant white wolf howled and turned its head. Its large green eyes locked onto a hill a few miles away. The woman who spoke earlier realized his intentions and stepped forward. Master, you just advanced. You should consolidate, or there will be problems. A white shadow flashed before her eyes. Boom, the ground began to shake violently as shockwaves containing rocks and sand hit the team. One of the members snapped his fingers, and an invisible wall blocked them all out. What? They looked at the hill, or rather, the missing hill. The large hill that seemed immutable just a moment ago was gone. All that was left was rubble. He's not just a level 7. Hera murmured in shock. But she quickly shook her head. Even if it's a high-grade treasure, it's been only a week. She turned to her teammates and said, not only did he absorb the treasure in a much shorter time, but he did it without missing any benefits. How is that possible? Get used to it, a middle-aged man said in a depressed tone. Young master has a talent that seems out of this world. Comparing him to others is an insult to him. Indeed. Hera sighed deeply but quickly turned her gaze to Charles's figure in the distance. The white wolf was jumping high into the air, crashing to the ground without any precautions. Boom, a huge crater formed in the middle, surrounded by cracks. But the white wolf was alive and kicking, having suffered only a few small cuts. It rushed out of the crater and continued attacking the hills. Its speed was also impressive. What is his morphing entity? She asked in a bewildered tone. As a relatively new member of Charles's team, she didn't know much about his powers. But the more she watched him, the more certain she became that this white wolf had no weakness. Its attacks could crush hills, its speed broke the sound barrier, and its regeneration worked effectively on even the minor cuts and scratches. Its physical defense was enough to withstand the crashes. Lykos. The middle-aged man answered. Young master's entity is Lykos, also known as the god of wolves in Old Earth's mythologies. God of wolves? Hera's eyes widened as she repeated the words. Yes. The higher the level, the larger Lykos grows, the man said with a confident expression. Is it as powerful as the Golden Titan? Hera asked, comparing father and son. The man's expression darkened, but he answered in a low voice, in fact, Lykos at its peak can overpower the Golden Titan any day. Whoa. Hera covered her mouth in admiration and shock. Then young master will be the most powerful sovereign. Think beyond sovereign levels. Charles appeared in front of them suddenly and said in a light voice. Yes, sir. Even those who usually avoided speaking saluted. Charles then checked his own aura and nodded to himself. He and his team had found a rare treasure in the ruins. If it were normal, level 8s should have taken it. However, since they were all Charles's subordinates and followers, he took it. Digesting it would take normal awakeners at least 2 to 3 months, but he not only digested it in a week but did so without wasting any medical potency. That's why now, I'm... Charles clenched his fist and felt the surging mana in his body. It was not a low-level 7 aura. Already high-level 7. The number 1 in the younger generation. As his lips curled up, he sensed a presence rapidly rushing into the valley. Charles scanned the area, and his tense body relaxed. Shortly, a man in blue clothes appeared and ran in front of Charles. It was a messenger from Xander's. "What is it?" Charles asked, showing obvious disinterest. "Sir. We found the killer responsible for your brother's and aunt's death." "What?" Charles's eyes turned scarlet. Tap. 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 Julius Xander tapped his table and read the news again. Bali has cleared the 10th stage in the Golden Room. The gate has glowed violet. How true is this? Are they lying? He asked the robed man in front of him. The robed man was a level 8, but when Julius' gaze fell on him, he felt completely powerless, as if he were a mere fly that could be swatted to death. Gulping nervously, he answered, "No, sir. There are 30 princes and princesses there." Everyone said the same, he replied in a respectful tone. "Oh." Julius propped his chin on his hand and thought deeply. "Aren't any of our own princes or princesses among them?" As the strongest prime family, the Xanders had quite a few princes and princesses. So, Julius thought that since a group of 30 princelings participated in the Golden Room at once, there would also be a Xander or two. The robed man didn't answer. He lowered his head and held his breath. "What is it?" Julius narrowed his eyes, his voice growing cold. "Yes, sir, the Xander princes are being avoided by every other prince after the Shadow Guardian incident," he said, his voice bordering on a cry. He might as well have cried as Julius slapped his desk. Bam! The premium, custom-made desk imported from Uranus turned to dust and vanished into the air. Gulp. The robed man feared for his life and didn't even dare to move. That desk, only peak level 9s could break it, and only into a piece or two. But Julius turned it to dust. "If that attack falls on me, even my bones won't be left behind." Tap. 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 Julius continued to tap his fingers, but since there was no desk, he just tapped the air. The sheer force at his fingertips caused the air to explode, sending shockwaves across the room. It was done unintentionally, but those mere shockwaves from his unintended actions were capable of killing even the fiercest level of success. Bali isn't in ruins. He is training. Julius rubbed his chin. At least, that's what Evander said when Bali disappeared. But even if Bali is in the ruins, he is incapable of reaching the 10th floor, much less clearing it. Julius was damn sure about this. The princes were perhaps too excited, but it was common sense that the peak level 9 wasn't the end of level 9. It extended to the sovereign state. While most people considered the 10 stages could be cleared easily in lower levels, Julius thought the opposite. As a peak level 9, one can clear the first 6 stages. Then, the stronger one is as a sovereign, the more stages one can clear. He took a deep breath. When one is only a step away from celestial rank, one can clear the 10th stage. As more and more people failed to clear the 9th stage, much less reach the 10th, Julius' opinion turned into an unshakable belief. But now, someone broke his belief. They defied what seemed like common sense to him. Defy common sense. When Julius thought of these words, a pair of eyes appeared in his mind. Yes. He reached level 5 in 2 months, completely defying common sense. You little cockroach. Julius stood up and stomped in anger. Boom. Gotcha. The Guardian Palace they were in was a huge palace floating above the Guardian Islands. With his stomp, the palace began to shake violently, and his aura fluctuations spread throughout the islands. They covered hundreds of miles, reaching every corner. The children, who were about to play, started crying in fear. The adults froze in shock before rushing inside their homes. The beasts on one of the hunting islands knelt on the spot and let out cries of submission. Even the level 9 guards on the island looked at the floating palace with a mix of fear and awe. The man responsible for everything sat on his chair in the palace and crossed his legs. "Dreamer, how dare you enter the ruins?" Julius gnashed his teeth. After he thought Varian had died, Julius was happy. He even held a small celebration. However, the storm on social media a few days later revealed that Varian was somehow still alive. Julius had no idea how it was possible. Yet, no one but Dreamer could control the entire metanet and expose the truth. Despite Julius's best efforts, things spiraled out of control. In the end, he had to kill his uncle and niece with his own hands. It was more humiliating than painful. Even though he didn't see Varian, Julius could hear his mocking laughter in his ear. His first reaction to that laughter wasn't anger, but fear. Fear, an emotion Julius rarely felt. But for this mysterious young man who kept breaking his common sense, fear was only natural. It's natural to fear the unknown, at least that's what he thought. "I need to kill him at any cost." Julius clenched his fists, and a fierce killing intent burst out of him. Whoosh! Schwa! The wind turned sharp, and each breeze felt like a flood of prickling needles. "Yes, sir," the robed man finally called out. Julius looked at him and said, without making it explicit, "Lock down the ruins. Tail every single person who is exiting the ruins. But the manpower." The robed man stuttered. Even for Xanders, this wasn't an easy task. "Do whatever it takes." Julius waved his hand. "Are you going in, sir?" the robed man asked, after realizing that Julius was resolved to kill. "Me?" Julius would have answered yes, if not for Varian still surviving after he nearly destroyed the ghost ship. The ghost ship would make it hard for me to catch him. Julius shook his head. "I need the right candidate." He suddenly thought of High General Evander. "You say your daughter is on a secret mission, but Evander, I know what she's really been up to." Julius' lips curled into a cold smile. "May I bring a list of candidates?" The robed man stopped when Julius held out his hand. "I have a perfect candidate." Julius' smile was like that of a devil. "Perfect indeed. I have to attend a meeting. Revert the room." Julius stood up and walked out of the room, turning towards the conference room. As he was about to step away, he paused and swiped his comm. A few holograms flew out and entered the robed man's comm. "It won't help much, but send these to Charles." Charles read the letter with bloodshot eyes. Your aunt was killed by Enigma. You know this already. But she did it to save Sia. Sia. Charles recalled a girl from the academy. She was his junior, so he didn't know much about her. But she was a genius who quickly rose to the top of the first year. Even he knew that much. There were rumors that her progress speed was insane. She advanced from level 3 to level 4 in a single day. Charles shook his head. "What do you mean save Sia?" Charles covered his face. He remembered his aunt revealing some details about her special experiment. "Charles, you will have the best talent in the history of humanity," Roxana said with a beaming smile. "But how?" "My father is more talented than me." The 19-year-old Charles tilted his head in confusion. Back then, he wasn't bitter yet. Nor had he become so cold toward people. He had only a few friends, but he cherished them deeply. "There is a girl who is helping us," Roxana said with a cryptic smile. "Can I meet her?" Charles asked eagerly. "Oh dear, she doesn't want to meet anyone." Roxana shook her head, as if it were a pity. "It's fine if it's her wish." Charles waved his hand. "She's helping in your experiments, right?" "Oh yeah, she's surely helping." Roxana nodded with a smile. Her eyes, however, showed a firm resolve. It was a strange expression, and Charles noticed it. But back then, he only thought it was due to her determination to succeed in the project. Looking back now, he understood it was much different from what he had imagined. Arg. Fuck. 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 Charles knelt and kept punching the ground. With each punch, a fist imprint formed, and gravel shot out. Charles's heart burned with pain and anger. His aunt wasn't the woman he thought she was. She had used Sia for experiments, and that's why Enigma killed her. Why? Charles roared. His group was shocked at his reaction after reading the letter, but they didn't intervene, letting him vent. It still shocked them to watch their usually composed master behave like an enraged and wounded beast. Why did you hide this from me? Charles growled, his punches never stopping. Before he knew it, blood was dripping from his fists and sliding down his forearms. Why did you only show your good side? Charles lowered his head and gritted his teeth. Then, Roxana's expression when talking about Sia flashed in his mind, the firm resolve in her eyes. It wasn't about the project, it was a resolve to protect him from her own dark side. She wanted Charles to be free from her sins. Charles, while desperate for his father's approval, would never stoop so low as to torture an innocent girl to improve his talent. That was the Charles she knew. That was also the Charles she wanted to preserve. Drip. 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 As his vision blurred, Charles wasn't entirely sure what was happening. Only when he tasted the salty tears in his mouth did he realize they were rolling down his cheeks. Aunt. You tried to keep me the same, but just 1 year after your death, I'm someone my past self can't even recognize. It was a truly painful realization. After his aunt's death, Charles fell into a depression. It was only a few months after Varian's mother died and Varian fell into his own depression. Unlike Varian, who bottled himself up and gave up on his Awakener dreams out of guilt, Charles did the opposite. He went all in on training. His rising talent gave him tremendous confidence, but it also led to the loss of his teammates. As they struggled to keep up, Charles abandoned them. He stopped talking to his friends, and due to his increasingly cold demeanor, they stopped visiting him as well. Very soon, Charles found himself without his friends and teammates. In his family, Charles began to receive more and more support from the elders. The #1 genius until then, Princess Iris Xander, was sidelined as he took the limelight. However, Charles didn't notice that the loyal supporters who stood by him when he wasn't as talented were starting to leave. Perhaps he did notice, but he couldn't bring himself to ask them to stay. No, it was his pride that wouldn't let him. Somewhere along the way, Roxana's words, "You have the best talent in the world. You will be the #1, stayed with him even after her death." Perhaps it was his way of honoring her, or perhaps it was his obsession with the only close family bond he ever had. Charles didn't know. But he lost his cheerfulness and naivety. He became cold, arrogant, and bitter. It was a rabbit hole he shouldn't have gone down. Now, he didn't even know the way out. He was trapped inside his own mind. Where did I lose myself? Charles sniffed and muttered. There was no answer, only more tears. But no matter how much he cried, the old Charles wasn't coming back. So, he pushed back his tears and continued reading the letter. The one who killed your brother is Enigma. Bang! Charles's fist transformed into a huge paw, and he slammed it into the ground. The whole valley began to shake as the land cracked. Enigma, you took my brother and my aunt, Charles muttered, his head lowered. His aunt, it seemed, was in the wrong. He knew it, but he couldn't accept her death, or his brother's. Charles felt the rage inside him reach a new level. He barely kept it under control as he read the final piece of the letter. Varian and Sia grew up together. This. Charles thought back and remembered Varian. Didn't he die long ago? Sia and Enigma are closely related. So are Enigma and Dreamer. Bitches of the same feather flock together. Dreamer is in Earth ruins, and Dreamer is Varian himself. Ka. Kacha. Charles clenched his bloodied fists, and the sound of his knuckles cracking resounded in the chilling silence. Varian, you will be my revenge. Every year, the Awakeners searched for different things in the Trian ruins. Even if you were an awakener entering the ruins for a treasure, you had 45 days. Getting the treasure you wanted was already difficult. It required extensive preparations, research, groundwork, setting up a proper team, suitable weapons, and more. But even if you succeeded, there was no guarantee that you would find another valuable treasure. So, most people took on 1 or 2 missions to boost their earnings. Those who couldn't enter the ruins alone would offer missions, ensuring a constant supply. These could be for Deva technology, ecology, or history. This has been the case every year, including last year and the year before. But not this year. This year, all awakeners searched for one thing. From the northern cold regions to the southern plains, from the western forests to the eastern deserts, everyone sought the same goal, the keys. Last year, a partially explored area was further investigated, revealing a colossal floating palace. Upon its discovery, the palace made an announcement that resonated directly in the minds of every awakener in the ruins. "Oh, proud Devas, the keys have been sent to every corner of the capital. Find one, and you will be granted entry to the ruler's abode." This message sent ripples not just through the Trian ruins but throughout the solar system. That's why this year, not only were awakeners participating, but they were all focused on finding the key. Is this Sia's test, or rather, her last resistance? Varian murmured as his body flashed in and out of the wilderness. Each time his feet touched the ground, they propelled him forward. He covered dozens of miles in an instant, moving like a bullet. His speed was far beyond his level 6 capabilities. In fact, it was like comparing a plane to a rocket. Whenever Varian teleported, he easily covered 50 miles. Every few minutes, he moved from one area to another, equivalent to crossing a state every few seconds. The scenery kept changing. One moment it was a beautiful red garden filled with roses that could kill you with their scent. Then, it was a lake of sirens that seduced you with their mental charms, offering both joy and doom. Other times, he encountered groups of humans fighting monsters or each other. Sometimes, these humans were on the verge of death. In the 2 hours since Varian started his journey, he encountered at least a dozen ravishing women who appeared to be dying. Whenever he passed them, they called for help with pitiful eyes, even promising themselves to him as thanks. A normal man, tempted by such a lure or moved by chivalry, would have helped them. After all, which hero doesn't save a helpless girl? Not Varian. He didn't save any of these women. For one, without much thought, he knew most were faking it. They weren't really injured, they were just waiting for him to let his guard down so they could kill him for his loot. But there were also women who were truly on the verge of death. Varian left them, too. He was too preoccupied to think about others. His mind was focused on the one question that had recently surfaced: Sia would appear in the ruler's abode. That was the only thing he knew. But it was also the only thing she wanted him to know. Why couldn't she meet him anywhere else? Perhaps because she had important work to do. But Varian strongly believed in another reason: Sia still wants to run away. She's sure I can reach level 7, but she's also sure I won't be able to get the keys. Varian took a breath as he landed on a mountain. Roar! A lightning bolt shot at him from somewhere, and a gold-scaled tiger rushed at him. It was a mid-level 7, significantly faster than him. But he didn't need to run. Blink. Varian's body disappeared, and he teleported 50 miles away. Blink. 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 In no time, he was out of the gold-scaled tiger's perception. This is Sia's last resistance, but also her last test. If I go through this, she won't run away anymore. Varian's heart grew heavy. He had worked so hard to reach this point. Yet, she was still unwilling to meet him halfway. If it was anyone else, Varian would have been angry. But it was Sia. Her behavior didn't make him angry, instead, it made him sad. The Sia I knew wasn't like this. She was bright and cheerful, always lifting his spirits when he was down. Living with her for nearly a decade, he knew her better than anyone else. If she faced a problem, she'd confront it head-on. When she dealt with his bullies, one of them had a senior in the 3rd year. Sia had to fight that senior girl. Varian could still remember the back alley where they fought. It was an unfair fight from the start. The girl was not only older but also significantly stronger than Sia. But Sia didn't give up. Even as injuries piled up, she bit her lip and swallowed her pain. That same girl who had an unyielding look in her eyes even when her chances of victory were non-existent was now behaving like someone so scared of her problems that she'd rather run away than confront them. "What happened to you?" Varian asked the snow. Blink. The snow changed to red soil. "Did the pain Roxana inflicted on you break you like Mom's death broke me?" Blink. The red soil changed to green grass. "Did I hurt you so much that you can't smile anymore?" Blink. The green grass changed to yellow sand. "I will find you, and this time, I will never let you go." Lake of Illusions. One of the many unexplored locations in the Trian ruins. From all the possible options, this was the one most suitable for him. Varian took a breath and looked at the lake in front of him. It started at his feet and extended to the horizon. He had to turn around to see how wide it stretched. The lake's blue water glittered like pearls under the sunlight. Varian focused his gaze on the lake, trying to find anything unusual. Nothing. It was perfectly still, peaceful, and beautiful. But that was a mere illusion. There were definitely awakeners on the lake, and they were fighting fiercely. Varian could feel the heat waves, violent winds, and space fluctuations even at the edge of the lake. Though he couldn't see them, he knew what they were fighting for. Even with everyone else being invisible, the object at the center wasn't hidden by the lake. It shone with a dreamy silvery light, resembling a precious jewel. The key. "I have to get it, but..." Varian looked up. Just a few hundred meters above the lake, a plain red surface was floating, stretching for several miles in both length and width. His space sense spread out, and Varian saw the whole thing, a giant red monster. It looked like a snake but had giant wings resembling those of an eagle. Its face was similar to that of a lion. It was currently sleeping, but with each exhale, it created a fire tornado that danced in the vast desert where Varian stood. According to the scientists, this place wasn't a desert previously. It was, in fact, a very fertile plain. But once this creature slept here for a century, a desert was born. The only thing spared was this lake. Varian turned his gaze back to the lake. His space sense spread into the lake, but it disappeared without a trace. As expected, I can't find the situation inside. But the biggest opponent would only be peak level 7, he was sure. It wasn't that level 8s and level 9s didn't want to come here, they simply couldn't. HR. As the red creature snored, another fire tornado brewed into existence in the distance, scorching the desert. If level 8 and level 9 awakeners even entered the range of this huge creature, it would wake up. This had been tested and proven countless times. Each time, the creature took the lives of those who woke it up, even sparing no level 9s. But level 7s and below were ignored by it. When asked why, the experts gave this answer: it treats level 9s like annoying trouble, level 8s like flies. Then level 7s? Like bacteria. Varian covered his face. Level 7s and still bacteria. Shaking his head, he stepped towards the lake. There were low-level 7s, mid-level 7s, high-level 7s, and even peak-level 7s here. This is the best location for me. I must get the key. He jumped onto the lake. Whoosh! Instead of drowning, Varian stood on the water. This was a special quality of the lake: people couldn't drown in it even if they wanted to. Before he could appreciate the novel experience, a white fog enveloped him, then vanished abruptly. Varian was still on the edge of the lake, and nothing seemed to have changed. But he knew he was currently under the illusion of the lake. He looked around to check out the awakeners. But he could only see 100 meters. He did catch a glimpse of an awakener's back before it disappeared. Not only that, he couldn't hear anything beyond his 100-meter bubble. Senses were being tampered with. Varian dashed forward. As an explored area, Illusion Lake was well known to everyone. Besides the illusions, there was one more danger: roar. A figure emerged from the lake in front of Varian. No, it wasn't exactly human. While the face was that of a middle-aged man, its entire body was covered in blue-scaled armor. It exuded an aura that said, "I'm fishy," literally. It was a fully armored merman. Ugh. Varian wasn't surprised by the merman's appearance. He raised his hand and slapped the creature's head. Roar. The merman quickly created a water shield, but it shattered on contact. The creature's head exploded, spilling blue brain matter. Varian winced and decided not to do that again. I need to keep going. He moved 300 meters without encountering any humans. However, he did find 2 more mermen. They were slightly stronger than the previous one, but still only low-level 7. Zap! Zap! The lightning bolts fried them. As he moved further, Varian's kills became more efficient. The lake's radius was almost 50 miles, and Varian was barely 1% in. So, he increased his speed and rushed toward the center. Since the lake was too large and their senses were restricted, Varian didn't encounter any other humans for almost 2 miles. Most likely, he just passed by them without noticing. But the strength of the mermen kept increasing. They were still low-level 7 and were thus one-shot. However, they started to appear more frequently and launched group attacks. Shwa! This fucking merman breeding lake. As he severed the head of the 5th and final merman of the group, Varian muttered in disgust. As an explored area, Illusion Lake's characteristics were well known. The merman kill count was tallied every 24 hours. The one with the most kills would receive a reward that would assist with water, fire, and mind paths. Over the 45 days the ruins remained open, there were also grand tests for the cumulative kills at 15, 30, and 45 days. The longer the period, the more valuable the rewards. Shwa! 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 Varian was 3 miles in and had yet to encounter any humans, but he kept swinging his sword at the merman. After a few more minutes, Varian crossed the 6th-mile mark and encountered his first human. Oh boy. Prince Lar was a newly promoted prince. At just 28, he reached level 7 and proved himself to be one of the geniuses. He wasn't a monster like Princess Iris, who reached level 7 when she turned 27, but he was certainly a genius among geniuses. It had been only a few months since Prince Lar reached level 7, but he had not only completely consolidated his level, he had even taken a step further. He could safely say he was the strongest newbie. But my strength isn't enough to get the key, Lar knew better than anyone else. With his current level 7 power, his chances were close to none. But he still entered the lake. If the strongest competitors got injured in the fights, maybe he could snatch the key at an opportune moment. Maybe. Since getting the key was unlikely, he focused on what he could achieve there. The tangible reward besides the key was something that helped with water, fire, and mind paths. He wouldn't be getting it either, he was too weak. So, he focused on the intangible reward, reputation. I can fight the low-level 7s and prove myself to be the strongest. Lar was confident in winning against his peers and establishing his supremacy. As far as he knew, low-level 7s were present from the 1st mile to the 20th mile. The deeper one went, the stronger they were. Of course, he wasn't so deluded as to think he could win against his seniors who were on the verge of reaching mid-level 7. So, he decided to stay within the range of 6 to 8 miles. 6 miles in, he had already defeated 2 princes and a princess. When his senses detected a human intruding his space of 100 meters, he assumed it was another prince. But unexpectedly, it was a strange man. Is it a prince in disguise? But why disguise here? Lar didn't understand, but that didn't stop him from gripping his hammer. Lar's chi flowed through every inch of his body. As an extreme awakener, he heightened his speed. Whoosh! The air exploded, and the water under the lake stirred violently as he reached the man in the blink of an eye. Lar didn't aim for the vitals, but when he heightened his strength and raised his hammer, he was damn sure it wasn't going to be an easy hit. But he did it anyway. With a force enough to blast a mountain to pieces, he swung his hammer. Boom! The air was forcibly ripped apart, creating a vacuum. Lar watched with confidence as the hammer approached the man's shoulder. The man stood still. Defend yourself. Lar shouted, dumbfounded at the man's lack of response. As the hammer was about to strike his shoulder, the man raised his head and looked Lar in the eye. Time seemed to freeze as a golden light blinded Lar. Zop! A loud thunderclap followed, and Lar found himself high in the sky. Huh! When Lar opened his mouth in confusion, blood flowed out uncontrollably. As he raised his hand to wipe off the blood, he noticed he couldn't feel his right hand. Looking down, he saw that a hammer was embedded in his right chest, creating a huge cavity, cracking his bones from his shoulder blade to his forearm. Lightning sparked above his sunken chest, entering his body. Wah, arg. Only then did his nerves catch up, and the searing pain burned through him. The lightning flooded his insides with an intent to devastate. His chi hurriedly formed a wall to protect itself. Since he wasn't consciously defending, parts of the lightning mana breached the chi wall and started to electrocute parts of his body. Lar twitched violently and, before things could get serious, he mobilized his chi against the lightning mana. At the same time, he heightened his healing. The rogue lightning mana was quickly isolated, and with the rest of the foreign mana, it was expelled. The lightning mana was strong for a low-level 7, but it wasn't excessively powerful. Whoosh! By the time Lar cleared his insides, he began to fall. The entire time from when he was punched into the air to when he started falling was less than half a second. But for a level 7, this was a significant duration. As he started to fall, Lar looked down at the lake. It was empty, as expected. Unless he was on the lake, he couldn't see anything. Even when he was on it, the visible range was only about 100 meters. In the blink of an eye, Lar landed on the outskirts of the lake. From the 6-mile mark, he was now at the 0-mile mark. Fucking hell. Lar cursed in exasperation as he quickly retrieved a potion and downed it. With the combination of his heightened regeneration and the potion, his right arm began to heal at a visible rate. But it would still take a few minutes. Roar! A merman appeared and pounced on Lar. The prince finished it off with his left hand, but he didn't move. In fact, he stood in place without taking a single step forward. He still couldn't understand how he was so thoroughly defeated. How? Then another question emerged. Who is he? The same question was on the minds of the 2 princes and 3 princesses who were kicked out to the edge of the lake by Varian. Like Lar, they all stood in their places, frozen like statues. The scene of their attack on the mysterious man kept flashing in their minds. A princess transformed into a beautiful red flower plant and summoned 10 small, similar flowers. As they filled the space with dangerous poison, Varian used his psychic powers to disrupt her attack. Then, he blasted the space and kicked her out. A prince transformed into a fire wolf, triggering Varian's bad memories. He ended up beating down the prince using his lightning, superhuman, and space powers before kicking him out. Out of all the low-level 7s Varian fought, this one was the most injured. Then, a psychic princess tried to pull Varian into an illusion. Since he didn't often fight using this method, he couldn't resist being pulled into the illusion. He found himself in a dangerous place from his memory, the cluster cities. Contrary to what happened in reality, here the Abyssals succeeded in their ploy. The cluster cities were destroyed, and Uranus planetoids were occupied. The link between Uranus and Neptune was severed, and the Abyssals began their assault on Neptune. It was scarier than any horror story. But after the initial fear, Varian quickly pulled himself together and used his mental power. Although he wasn't yet accustomed to it, he couldn't easily break the illusion itself. However, he managed to send his mental sense out of the illusion to search for the psychic princess. She stood at a distance, completely unarmed, looking at him with a condescending gaze. In her opinion, he was finished. Of course, she wasn't careless. While most of her mental sense was focused on keeping him in the illusion, she also remained alert for others who might enter the space. So, if Varian tried any lightning or space attacks, she would have noticed. He didn't. Instead, Varian used the silent macro-kinetic power. It slowly reached her and formed a net around her. Since he took extra care to keep it hidden and it didn't show any obvious signs like other paths, the princess was caught off guard when he attacked. Then, she too was pushed to the edge of the lake. There were gravity path princes who froze Varian to a spot and nearly broke his bones. Even his lightning attacks were forcibly twisted by the intense gravity. However, when Varian added his psychic powers and caught them off guard, his lightning powers proved effective. The deeper he went, the stronger the opponents. The mermen were also stronger and often grouped together, but compared to humans, they were on a lower level. Thus, Varian didn't struggle much in crossing the first 15 miles. By this point, he was regularly using 2 paths against any opponent and occasionally had to use 3 paths. While Varian had more paths, they were all at 0/10k, with no progress, unlike the princes and princesses, who made significant advancements. As he got closer to the 20th mile, where the strongest low-level 7s were positioned, it became difficult to win even with 3 paths. Varian chose the combination of psychic, lightning, and space paths, which suited most of his fights. First, he attacked with lightning, making them think he was a single lightning path awakener, as dual awakeners were rare. When they blocked his lightning, he used his psychic power to disrupt their defense. They would overcome his interference, but by then, he would have already teleported behind them and attacked. In this way, Varian crossed the 20 miles and, on the 21st mile, encountered his first mid-level 7 opponent. A/N, I don't know why, but I really struggled to write today. So, there will only be 1 chapter. Apologies for the inconvenience. The Lake of Illusions had a radius of 50 miles. The first 20 miles were occupied by low-level 7s. From the 21st to the 35th mile, it was the mid-level 7s. Varian had defeated all the low-level 7s, so he knew that winning against mid-level 7s by normal means was impossible. That's why, the Abyss Prince's mask. Varian took out a bizarre mask from his storage ring. When he killed the Abyss Prince outside the cluster cities, he also took his storage device. The Abyss Prince could transform into a human and remain undetected. Even though great treasures for disguise existed, they couldn't change one species into another. But this Abyss Prince possessed a mind-boggling treasure. If it can turn an abyssal into a human, then... Varian put on the mask, and his form changed. His height increased by 2 feet, and his skin turned ashen. His eyes turned green, and his aura shifted subtly. He no longer gave off a human feeling. Wonderful! Varian exclaimed as he examined himself using his mental sense. The disguise was perfect. If he encountered anyone here, they would undoubtedly think he was an abyssal. But I don't need to be an abyssal here. Varian squinted his eyes and carefully moved back. Rather than entering the 21st mile, he retreated to the 20th. No. He didn't find what he was looking for. 19th mile. They aren't here either. 18th mile. Roar. Aha. Gotcha. Varian punched his palm. 3 mermen rose from the lake. The first merman waved its scaly arm, and a water pillar shot at Varian at an insane speed. The second merman froze the space around Varian. The third merman attacked Varian's mind, trying to pull him into an illusion. Humph. Even though all the mermen were on the stronger side of low-level 7, Varian didn't feel much pressure. Having already fought the psychic princess, the mental attack didn't immediately pull him into the illusion. Leveraging his space body, he used his supernatural strength to forcibly break through the frozen space. His space body had a significant affinity with space, so he didn't suffer the injuries he otherwise would have. Finally, the water pillar arrived. It did hit him. Splash, it hit him with such pressure that even the toughest steel would have long been broken. But Varian stood firm. His defense was reinforced by the 3 powers he had already displayed. Due to his space body, his body instinctively formed a special spatial layer, originating from his own body and forming an armor. His superhuman body also formed an instinctive defense by aligning his cells and chi as a defensive barrier. Finally, golden sparks appeared around his shoulders and fingertips, and his entire body turned golden. Whoosh, the water pillar's strong attack was diluted by the first defense, space, and then further slowed by his natural body defense. By then, the attack of the water pillar had dropped to a much lower level. Even then, taking it directly could mean a small injury. Zap, Varian's body turned into lightning, and the water passed through him. Roar. The mermen were astonished. They could feel that neither of his individual paths was stronger than theirs, but somehow, the combination of them gave him great leverage. It was a situation where the whole was greater than the sum of its parts. Snap, Varian snapped his fingers. Zap, Kacha, the space around the psychic merman cracked, and lightning reached him in the blink of an eye. The psychic merman tried his best to control Varian's mind to divert the attack, and due to the difference in their psychic power, he succeeded in normalizing the space. But he was a bit late with the lightning, and it burnt him like coke. Roar. The remaining 2 mermen were taken aback and wanted to retaliate. Humph. Varian froze the space around the space merman, which the latter easily broke. However, a lightning snake reached him by then. The water merman wouldn't let it happen, so he created an ice dragon to block the lightning snake. The space around the space merman tightened again. He broke it and was about to teleport, but Varian kicked the lake and shot towards the space merman. Boom! Breaking the sound barrier, he reached him in the blink of an eye. Roar! Both the space and water mermen were surprised by his move and attacked him simultaneously. Varian raised his fist, as if he was about to punch the space merman who was about to teleport. Kree, the space merman and water merman seemed to mock him. Varian smirked. Whoosh! As he swung his fist, he disappeared and reappeared right above the water merman. Kree! Punch! His fist, covered in lightning, struck the water merman. The water merman converted his body to water at the last moment. Usually, elementalization would have helped, but Varian was prepared. Ka! Zap! The space around the water merman cracked apart, and lightning wreaked havoc, forcibly breaking the elementalized state. The water merman was forced to turn back to normal. Bang! Then, its head was burst by Varian's fist. TCH. Varian turned to the final merman and smiled. Bang! 3 seconds later, Varian looked at the 3 merman corpses. One had its head blown off, another was burnt, and the final one had a huge cavity in its chest. Varian picked up the mask and tried to imitate the merman form. It was hard. The mermen only had human faces. Their shoulders were more curved than those of humans, and their backs were always bent. The blue scales that started from their shoulders stretched all the way to their fingertips. Instead of fingers, they had claws. Their lower bodies were covered in darker blue scales. Oh shit, Varian checked his form and shook his head. He was covering himself with a lightning barrier, so he wasn't afraid of being seen. He slowly and steadily worked on the disguise, perfecting the curved shoulders, shiny blue scales, claws, and finally, the aura unique to mermen. After nearly 30 minutes, Varian was done. Alright, time for round 2, he said, kicking the lake. He passed the 20th mile and reached his first mid-level 7 opponent. Roar! Varian roared. Awakening beyond 3 paths was impossible for any natural being. This was common knowledge across stellar civilizations. However, humans lagged behind and were thus unaware of this fundamental fact. They had many theories about the limits of divine paths, but they had no concrete proof. As a result, the average human believed what they saw as the limit, while the higher-ups and scientists knew they understood nothing. The princes and princesses belonged to this latter group. If such uncertain humans encountered something absurd, what would they think? They would assume it was their ignorance. So, when Varian, in the form of a merman, used 4 divine paths, the prince initially freaked out. What the fuck? Boom. Zap. But with a hard punch, a lightning spear, mental interference, and a space blast, he obediently followed the course. This fucking merman. Are you a new breed of this lake? Blood dripped from the prince's forehead and splashed onto the lake's solid surface. The next moment, the wound healed, and the prince was uninjured. Heel fighter. Varian's lips curled up involuntarily. Heel fighters fought recklessly, exploiting their hyper-regenerative capabilities to push their limits. Varian would have loved that path. But he had something better. Clenching his fists, Varian raised his arms. Ha! Boom! The wind momentarily stilled before it was blasted away. It was as if a hurricane struck the place, only worse. The prince, true to his training, punched back. Gotcha! The moment their fists connected, both of them froze for a moment before being thrown back. The prince's arm bled profusely as the terrifying attack tore his muscles and cracked his bones. Ka! 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 As if someone had flipped a reverse switch, his bleeding began to slow down, and his muscles started to repair themselves. In a few seconds, he would be back to normal. On the other hand, Varian's arm was completely twisted, hanging like a cane. His bones were broken, and his muscles were horribly torn. Blood poured out of his arm as if from a broken dam. Those supernatural awakeners had more strength than heel fighters. A mid-level 7 was generally a better bet than a newbie who had just reached level 7. Varian's strength was lower, and his injuries were worse. However, schwa. Varian's arm transformed into sturdy branches, and his fingers turned into smaller branches. His injuries began to heal at an insane rate. The prince looked at the merman, who was using its 5th divine path, and muttered, "Devis can do this too." What answered him was another punch. Humph. The prince, reckless like any other heel fighter, punched back. He had already gauged the merman's strength. Although its healing was a bit faster than his, it didn't matter. He would overwhelm the thing with a torrent of punches and break it down before it could heal. Or so he thought, neglecting the other paths of the merman. Zap! Ka! When their fists clashed for the second time, it was no longer superhuman path versus heel fighter path, but the combination of superhuman, space, and lightning versus heel fighter. Even his mind was attacked during the punch. Arg, fuck. The prince was flung into the air and crashed to the ground. The space and lightning acted as additional defenses on Varian's arm. But even with them, the prince managed to inflict a significant injury. Schwa. But the bleeding stopped in a second, and by then, Varian was punching the prince for the 3rd time. Boom. Boom. The two warriors clashed. If they fought on the plains, the aftermath of their attack would be felt for miles. However, the Lake of Illusions seemed to have a special mechanism. It suppressed the fluctuations, allowing only a bare minimum to spread outside. Considering the lake's structure, this made sense. Visibility was limited to 100 meters. If battle fluctuations spread, others would know their location and even their strength. This secrecy is good for me anyway, Varian thought as his psychic power broke apart his opponent's mental defenses and threw him into disarray. Hyuk. The prince's eyes started to bleed from the pressure on his brain. But they healed just as quickly. He glared at Varian and opened his mouth. Boom. The space around him shattered like glass, and the broken space cut through his skin like sharp blades. In fact, they were sharper than most metal blades, which couldn't even pierce his skin. But the spatial blades ripped his body apart in multiple places, leaving him lacerated. Hua. His healing started to work again, but the successive attack didn't give him much room. Bang! A lightning dragon broke into his body, trying to electrocute him. His chi worked in emergency to expel it. He was successful when... Whoosh! The wind whistled, and a punch struck his face. It was an uppercut. The prince's jaw broke, and he rose into the air in a parabola. Even in midair, the force of the punch had yet to transfer to his brain. When it finally did, he fainted. Thud. Varian glanced at the unconscious prince and examined his own body. There were multiple wounds, none too major, but not too shallow either. I guess I'm in the league of mid-level 7s, he assessed his strength. And, plus 200 XP, plus 400 XP, Superhuman Path level 7, 200 out of 10,000, Planty Fighter level 7, 400 out of 10,000, the battle, unlike the fights with low-level 7s, proved useful. But only 2. Varian clicked his tongue. He couldn't complain, though. These 2 were the main forces against the prince. But at least, I know I can improve by fighting mid-level 7s, Varian's lips curled up. He needed to get the key, but if he chose the right opponents along the way, he could also improve before the decisive moment. Varian didn't know how strong he was, but with each fight, he gained a better understanding. In the guise of a merman, he willingly sought out the mid-level 7th princes and princesses. Compared to the first mid-level 7th prince he fought, these were deeper in the lake and, thus, significantly stronger. Encountering them was also rare due to their low numbers in the vast lake. 23 miles. 25 miles. 28 miles, who? Varian turned his head toward the source of the sound and saw a woman. She looked at him in confusion for a moment, perhaps wondering why a merman was wandering, but the next second, her skin wriggled, and a large form replaced her. It was a creature that was anything but normal. In fact, it wasn't one particular creature at all. It had 3 faces, a shark, a tiger, and a snake. Its body was similar to that of a pangolin, covered in scales. Varian recalled the girl before she transformed. Even though she wasn't as pretty as Sarah, she was still somewhat beautiful. But now... Cree! He roared, though in reality, he lamented. I feel bad for you, girl. I won't beat you too much. The princess, now transformed into a hybrid creature, felt irritated by that roar. She couldn't understand what the merman implied, but she sensed it wasn't a normal battle cry. Growl. The tiger face growled, the shark face gnashed its teeth, and the snake hissed. The next moment, they all attacked. A pillar of purple poison reached Varian in the blink of an eye, followed closely by an ice dragon. The creature itself was next, particularly the tiger head, which opened its mouth, ready to tear him apart. Varian didn't want to test his resilience against the poison, so he teleported. However, like other things on the lake, his teleportation was also restricted. He could teleport dozens of miles outside, but here, he ended up teleporting only 100 meters. When he did, he realized something. Green smoke filled the 100 meters, and the poisonous gas spread everywhere, giving him no escape. A hybrid beast can be a headache, Varian thought, looking at the strange creature. Unlike normal beast morphers that transformed into a single entity, these hybrid morphers transformed into a creature that was a mashup of multiple entities. They could be either very weak or very strong, depending on the compatibility. This one had poison, water, and physical strength. The most troublesome part is the poison, Varian's thoughts spun, and he quickly thought of a solution. His space body pulled bits of space power out, forming a very thin but formidable space layer on every inch of his body. It was like an invisible second skin. Hiss. The moment the poison touched his space guard, it began to clash. Varian couldn't understand how a poison could fight the space layer, but he had more important things to do than think. Even if he wanted to, his opponent wouldn't give him the chance. Roar. From the green smoke, a giant creature lunged at him. Varian wanted to roll to the side, but as if it was all planned, 2 ice dragons appeared from both sides, cutting off his escape routes. I'm cornered. Varian snickered. Instead of feeling flustered, he felt amused. SZZZ. The poison continued to corrode his space protection, but Varian didn't care. He put force into his legs and pushed off the ground. With a resounding blast, he jumped into the air, meeting the creature midair. His eyes locked with the tiger head's, and the creature's eyes suddenly turned sluggish. However, perhaps this was the benefit of having 3 heads, the other 2 remained alert. The shark face and the snake face glared at him with killing intent. Varian raised his arms. Zap! Ka! The space around the creature shook violently and cracked like a mirror. Ka! The shark face grimaced as an ice barrier formed around the creature. Boom! As the space shattered into pieces and chaotic currents flooded the area, the creature remained unharmed due to its armor. But... bang! Kacha! Varian's body surged forward, propelled by his macro-kinetic force, reaching an insane speed. At this velocity, even a normal stone could destroy a large room. With that speed, Varian reached the creature. His fists glowed with golden lightning as lightning mana coursed through them, and he aimed for the tiger head. The creature panicked and hastily attacked. The snake's poison pillar engulfed him. SZZ. His space armor was already cracked, and the poison began to seep in, but Varian decided to end the fight. Meanwhile, the shark head was about to build another ice armor to protect itself from his punch. At that moment, Varian used his psychic powers to stall its thinking. The delay was only a few moments, but it was enough. Bang! It was a single punch, a punch that combined his superhuman strength, lethal lightning, and the momentum provided by macro-kinetic force. The punch was no joke. As the punch was about to connect, Varian realized something and forcibly decreased the intensity of his attack. Ka! The creature crashed to the ground like a meteor. If not for the lake's strange surface, there would have been a huge crater already. Roa, the creature tried to get up, but it never got the chance as one more arrived. Then another followed until it fainted. The creature transformed back into a normal woman. Varian looked at her and sighed. If I didn't control my punch at the last moment, she'd have died. Varian covered his face. He never considered himself one of those overly righteous heroes who never killed, even if it was the best answer. He had killed many, and he did it without remorse. But he never killed for the sake of killing, it was always for some reason or necessity. If he had killed her here, it would be entirely his fault. From what he observed, the princes and princesses weren't trying to kill each other. They just fought for the key. Of course, this princess herself attacked him mercilessly. If she could have killed him, she would have. But that was because he was a merman, not a human. Ugh! Varian was irritated by the realization that he couldn't do much about it. But that was the price to pay if he wanted to use all his paths openly. I need to find an excuse that allows me to use all my powers in public. I can't keep restricting myself to 3 paths forever, Varian thought. Who? He felt a small surge of strength followed by a familiar blue interface. Plus 100 XP. Plus 100 XP. Superhuman level 7, 300/10,000. Space level 7, 100/10,000. The increments are high, but in the total amount, it's only a drop in the ocean. Varian shook his head and reached for the princess. He decided to place her at the edge of the lake, where the other princes and princesses who fought him were also thrown or escorted. As he was about to touch her, a shout echoed. Stop! A spear aimed at his head followed. Varian dodged it easily and looked at the intruder, a man in his late 20s. He closed the distance between them and pulled the princess behind him. Who is she? No, fuck, if I was late, she'd be dead. Fuck. The prince cursed. Then he glared at the merman. I'll fucking kill you. Oh well, this puts me at peace, Varian thought, and his body disappeared. Stop. He didn't stop. 30 miles in, then 31, 32. It wasn't an unobstructed fight. He had to battle both humans and mermen. When Varian reached the 35th mile, he encountered his strongest opponent yet. Despite using all his powers, it wasn't an easy fight. However, he won and reaped the benefits. Superhuman level 7, 0.5k/10k, plus 0.1k. Space level 7, 0.2k/10k, plus 0.1k. Lightning level 7, 0.1k/10k, plus 0.1k. Plant Fighter level 7, 0.6k/10k, plus 0.2k. Psychic level 7, 100/10k, plus 0.1k. Macrokinetic level 7, 100/10k, plus 0.1k. Water level 6, 4/6, plus 1. And like that, he entered the 36th mile and faced his first high-level 7 opponent. A high-level 7. Even for level 7s, it wasn't easy. Some took only a few years, while others took decades. One step behind, and you'd be out of the race. So, the princes and princesses were perhaps the fiercest competitors in the entire Federation. They worked like crazy, taking missions all the time and competing for rare resources, leaving them with almost no time for a normal life. Their actions also remained mostly unknown, which is why they received so little media attention. They were almost non-existent in the public eye. High-level 7s were usually those ahead in the race, battle-hardened, experienced, and hard-working. So, when Varian encountered a high-level 7 prince, he was incredibly cautious. It paid off well. Boom! Right when he entered the 100-meter range of the prince, a lightning snake reached for his feet. Varian sidestepped and dodged the attack. Then, like a classic merman, he stared at the brown-haired prince with bloodshot eyes. Roar! The prince squinted his eyes. I remember clearing all the mermen in the vicinity. Where the heck is this guy from? All of them? Varian was slightly surprised, but he didn't stop his action. He teleported right behind the prince and punched his back. Boom! As the punch was about to reach his back, the prince's body shimmered with blinding golden light. He's about to elementalize. Varian noticed and used his psychic power. Buzz! The prince's mind was flooded with a terrifying pain and a cluster of illusions showing his worst nightmares. It should have caused him to freeze at least for a moment, resulting in a slight delay of elementalization. But that didn't happen with the prince. Arg! With a reverberating roar, he suppressed the pain and ignored the haunting feelings from his illusions. Blood spilled from his eyes, ears, and nose due to the trauma, but the prince didn't care. He pushed his lightning mana through, and when Varian's fist touched his skin, he elementalized. Zap! Varian's hand passed through the mass of lightning and emerged on the other side. Due to the momentum, Varian himself went inside the lightning body. It was then that the prince whispered, "Die." Oh shit. The rather tame lightning Varian was in turn chaotic. With a significant portion of his body inside the lightning, it attacked him simultaneously in multiple places. Arg! Roar! Varian stopped his human-like cry and responded like a merman. The lightning lashed out against him mercilessly. The space layer he hastily set up was torn apart, and his telekinetic barrier couldn't hold. His lightning barrier was the worst, it broke down the quickest. Are you for real? As the lightning flooded his body, aiming to burn his organs, Varian winced in pain. Compared to a high-level 7 lightning, his space, telekinetic, and lightning powers were all 2 levels lower. They stood no chance. As the lightning penetrated his body, his chi, prana, and other defenses came to block it. A fierce battle began within him. Varian gritted his teeth and leaned back, preparing to jump out of the lightning mass. You're not going anywhere, the prince's voice sounded, and the lightning became even more dangerous. Varian didn't even bother to roar in reply and combined his powers for a punch. Shwa! The lightning was momentarily torn apart, and he quickly jumped out. The prince, now a mass of lightning, followed, eager to end him. Varian expected this and was preparing to teleport. When the prince thought he had swallowed the merman, it had already teleported. Strange, it has body strength, telekinetic force, psychic power, space, and even lightning? Did the Devis create a weird monster? He muttered. Roar! An attack came from behind. The prince expected it and swung a lightning hammer without even turning around. He didn't need to, his lightning sense took care of it. Even though the merman was strange, the prince, who had gained the upper hand from the start, deemed it weak. Boom! Crack! He was wrong. The merman's punch broke the lightning hammer and hit the prince's back. What? The prince staggered a few steps but quickly stabilized. If the punch had been stronger, it would have shaken his elementalized state. Just how did it? The prince turned around and saw the merman on one knee. Its right arm was charred and hung like a broken branch, its flesh giving off a burnt smell, and even its bone was visible. The blood of the creature formed a puddle under its hanging arm. The prince raised his hand, and a lightning spear materialized. The merman stood up and met his gaze. Still challenging me? The prince scoffed. With that injured arm? The prince fell silent as he saw the merman's right arm turn into a branch and heal at a visible rate. By the time he came to his senses, it was already half healed. Fuck. What is this crazy creature? So many divine paths, the prince muttered, but his killing intent grew stronger. Is this some sort of rare creature? Will it give more points? The Lake of Illusions gave rewards based on the number of mermen killed, but the evaluation also depended on the strength of each merman. A high-level 7 merman had more points per kill than a low-level 7. So, the prince thought this special merman could be a rare monster, providing even more points. As one of the weakest high-level 7s, the prince was at the 36th mile. He knew his chances of getting the key were slim. So, he decided he might as well get the lake's reward. Haha. You are mine. The prince laughed and shot toward the merman. His lightning body left golden sparks in the air as he reached Varian in the blink of an eye. Haha. You're done. The prince summoned a lightning hammer in each hand. Roar. Varian roared and raised his hands, clearly intending to counter the hammers. It was meant to be the final strike to decide the battle, or so the prince thought. Boom. When the hammers reached the merman, it turned around and ran away. It even teleported to the distance and disappeared out of his 100-meter range. Wait. The prince quickly moved forward, eager not to lose this prey. But even if he moved quickly, his sensing range was only 100 meters. Varian used his speed and teleportation to get out of the prince's sight. I have to change the strategy. I can't win against high-level 7s with my current strength. Strength. Strength is enough to overcome any obstacles. Was that really true? Varian believed it at times, but there were also moments when he thought it was incomplete. Perhaps it was a misconception about how strength was perceived. It wasn't just one's own strength, it was the total power one could project after exhausting every possible means. So, when he found his strength lacking to fight off the high-level 7s, Varian's first thought wasn't to grind. That would have been foolish for several reasons. Each sublevel among High Awakeners had a significant difference. Even for him, it would take a considerable amount of time to reach the strength of a high-level 7. But even then, he would only be able to fight some of the weaker ones. He wouldn't be able to defeat the strong high-level 7s, let alone the peak-level 7s, who were the true obstacles to the key. That's why he chose another path. It was challenging and might not work, but if it did, it could solve a lot of problems. He stood still in one of the desolate places within the 35th-mile radius. He had already searched his surroundings and ensured he was far from the princes and princesses. Without a worry, he tapped his foot on the surface and waited. The lake's surface was sky blue, indistinguishable from any other water surface except that it acted like a solid. At least from the outside. This nature prevented anyone from diving into the lake. However, from the inside, the lake's surface wasn't solid. Gotcha. In the distance, the lake sky blue's surface trembled, and a crack appeared in the perfect blue, revealing a glimpse of the darker blue water beneath. Bam! Two scaled hands gripped the edge of the cracked surface and pushed upward. A merman emerged in front of Varian and growled at him. Varian wasn't surprised. This was normal in any part of the lake. Mermen just kept appearing and confronting the humans. Gotcha. 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 Three more cracking sounds resounded, and with the sound of wind whistling, three more mermen stood behind the first. They all looked at him with green eyes and hissed. Varian hissed back, trying to imitate them. His current form was that of a merman. His aura and even his actions resembled theirs. Not even the brightest human prince he encountered had any doubt about his merman identity. That was how perfect his disguise was. So, why? Roar. The leading merman roared, and the three mermen behind it followed its order. Water dragons flew into the air, and green vines spread out on the ground. Simultaneously, the space around Varian was locked off, and the gravity on him increased several times over. Where did I give it away? Varian cursed and broke the space lock. With ease, he teleported out of the attacks and looked at the mermen again. How are they able to tell me apart? Varian thought hard. Perhaps his disguise wasn't perfect. It was good enough for humans, but not for the mermen. He could be missing a piece. The only way to know is to keep trying. Varian's body flashed, and he kicked the ground. Whoosh. Boom. Boom. It was a foregone fight. In a few minutes, Varian decimated the merman force. But instead of killing them, he left them alive with serious injuries. Then, he began to examine the differences between his disguised form and the original merman. Each species has a way. Varian's mental sense scanned through the body of the merman, analyzing each and every part. A way to distinguish their own from others. Boo, make a list of recognition patterns. Varian paused abruptly and closed his eyes. He had forgotten. No, he had been trying to forget, at least temporarily. Even though he tried to avoid it, his mental sense flowed into the ghost ship. It was still frozen. The holographic graphs in the command room were paused, as if time itself had stopped. In the same room, Boo was rubbing its chin and looking at one of the graphs. It was a cute picture. If only Boo wasn't frozen. Varian pushed down his worries and turned his attention back to the merman. One by one, he crossed out the possibilities. Sight asterisk, I look the same as them, down to the scales. Words asterisk, they don't have any language, but they do have different sounds that signal their intent. Battle cry, anger, sadness. I should learn and replicate these. But this can't be the reason my disguise isn't successful. They attacked me even before I made any sound. Aura asterisk, the feeling my aura gives off is the same as theirs. Smell asterisk, but I can't smell anything different. Varian focused his senses and checked if there was any special scent coming from the merman. It struck him that fish used smell as their primary sense. This was made possible by... Varian rubbed his forehead and tried to remember the information he studied during his early years. Normally, he wouldn't have recalled it, but thanks to his psychic power, he remembered it in a second. Pheromones. Pheromones were special chemicals that creatures release from their bodies. They play a significant role in communication. For example, ants release a specific chemical to alert their species of any incoming threats. Fuck. I totally forgot about them. Varian slapped his forehead. Their role in the human race wasn't very pronounced, so it wasn't surprising he had forgotten about them. What sort of pheromone do they release? Varian spread his mental and other senses to check. He quickly found a strange substance being released from the merman's skin. It was colorless and odorless, but it was definitely there. This substance was then absorbed by another merman through its scales, which responded with a slight movement. Varian followed the nerve connections through the scales and confirmed that it was indeed an identification pheromone. Well. His face lit up brighter than disco lights, and he reached for the mermen's bodies. The pheromones were near the right chest of the merman. All he needed to do was, caw. Thanks for the pheromones. Roar. Varian roared into the empty air. Then, he took a deep breath, filling his lungs. Roar. This roar was slightly different from the last. It emphasized different parts of the sound and stretched the middle. Varian held his throat, wondering if it was still working. If he were a normal human, it would have broken by now. The merman's sounds were that difficult. His superhuman body handled such issues, allowing him to focus solely on becoming a true merman. After much provocation, observation, and testing, Varian concluded the necessary roars for a merman. A. Gather. B. Attack. C. Target. He initially thought there would be a roar signaling retreat. That was common sense. But common sense didn't apply to mermen. Even on the verge of death, they would fight. It was an annoying trait for any human entering the lake. Varian didn't like the trait before. But now, roar. He couldn't stop smiling. Mermen were simple creatures, perhaps too simple. They recognized their own through pheromones, followed an alpha, and attacked based on the alpha's roars. Varian had the pheromones. Thus, when he encountered 3 mermen, they didn't attack him. They merely glanced at him before starting to search for prey. He wasn't their alpha, so they didn't listen to him. He needed to prove himself as an alpha. How? He chose the most straightforward way. Boom. 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 He beat the merman mercilessly. Cree, cree, cree. The 3 mid-level 7 mermen bowed their heads in subservience. They had accepted his leadership. Roar. Varian let out a simple roar and moved forward. The 3 mermen exchanged glances and followed him. Since he had already surveyed the surrounding area, Varian made sure they didn't encounter any humans. Instead, they ran into more and more mermen. From his frequent travels, Varian discovered that mermen had a strong sense of territorial ownership. A territory's alpha never left their domain. Then what if another alpha steps in? Varian acted on his thought. If the same thing happened to animals, they would fight it out. Roar. The alpha of the native territory, along with his 5 subordinate mermen, came to battle him. Varian smiled. They aren't much different from animals. Then. Zap. Kacha. The sky-blue surface of the lake reflected a golden light, followed by a gray crack. The alpha of the group knelt on the ground, bowing his head. Cree, his subordinates naturally followed suit. Heh. Varian smiled and gave a victorious roar. His followers increased to 9. Then 12. 15. 20. 50. Varian looked at the large group he had gathered in just a few hours and stroked his chin. They're quite strong collectively. Even though he was cautious, they still ended up encountering humans. But his group was able to defeat them with ease. Of course, Varian didn't let them kill the humans, he only had them thrown out. Still, this group filled Varian with confidence. Now then, it's finally time for the level 7s. Varian turned his gaze to the 36th mile. The prince on the 36th mile sighed in exasperation. The strange merman had escaped. It was surely a rare boss that would have given him many more points. Fuck. Even though he was a high-level 7, every new one was a challenge, and he lost to a low-level 7 merman. A freaking merman. In my defense, it has multiple paths. 5 or 6. What a monster. The prince sighed again. If only that bastard thing appeared in front of my eyes, I wouldn't let it escape. Neve, the prince froze. This. His eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets as he saw the merman. The strange merman. Because it was so strange, his lightning sense had memorized it, and he recognized it instantly. The prince's lips curled up into a smile that stretched from one ear to the other. Ha ha ha. The heavens have blessed me with a second chance. With a burst of reverberating laughter, the prince transformed into a streak of lightning and reached the strange merman. Roar! The merman looked him in the eye and roared. It was a bit different from a usual merman roar, but the prince didn't care much. He was too ecstatic to notice such trivial details. You are done. You can't escape this time. The prince raised his hand and summoned a long lightning spear. The 50-meter-long spear soon condensed to just 2 meters, but its glow intensified. Die. Schwa. Like a burning sun descending to earth, the spear reached Varian. It seared the air and spiked the temperature. The lake's surface reflected a beautiful gold. As the spear was about to touch the merman, the prince finally pumped his fist into the air. Yee, boom. Bang. His words stopped abruptly as more than a dozen attacks of various kinds drowned the lightning spear. Water dragons, gravity locks, space brakes, and branch shields. The lightning spear, which seemed capable of burning down a hill, dissipated like a weak candle in a storm. Wah! The prince opened his mouth to question but shut it in utter horror. There were 50 mermen behind this special merman. Roar! At the signal of the strange merman, the 50 turned their gazes to him and channeled their powers. Even though he hadn't been attacked yet, the prince's body trembled. I knew it. I fucking knew it. This thing is a rare boss. More points. Or how could it have so many followers? Arg. Damn it. I should have killed this thing. His thoughts were futile. The attacks materialized and were aimed at the prince. Fuck. The prince looked at the special merman and thought of kidnapping him. But, the space that continuously solidified around him made it clear that it was impossible. Roar. Varian ordered. Whoosh. Schwa. Fucking hell. The prince cursed and channeled his lightning mana. His body turned into lightning and broke the space lock. As the attacks reached him, he didn't even try to block them and ran away. Varian looked at their reversed roles and covered his face. Aha. Ha 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 ha. Only his laughter echoed for a long time. Sometimes, a partially explored region would yield great treasures. However, every time it did, it was only after a fierce competition. Such competitions were perfect opportunities to battle geniuses from across the solar system. The winner's fame would spread to every corner of the Federation. Many great geniuses in the past built their reputations here. One such genius was Julius Xander. Not long ago, he entered the ruins at level 9, finding one of the many passes to a special location within the partially explored region. He fought everyone for the treasure and claimed the Guardian Palace, a treasure only slightly less powerful than an artifact. However, not all participants were at level 9. Sometimes, it was a level 7 or a level 8. These special regions typically had restrictions that limited one's level, leveling the playing field. Of course, sometimes it was a test of sheer strength. This time, there was news that the location accessible through the key would have restrictions. This meant that even those below level 9 could still compete and have a chance at winning the treasures. That's why the princes and princesses were so desperate to get the key. I'll say this once again, Artine. This isn't for you. Back off, a prince in a white dress with golden designs said, his gaze chilling. The air around him crackled as lightning snakes coiled around him. Heh. Make me, Princess Artine in front of him smirked, clenching her fist. The wind burst, and a shockwave exploded with her at the center. You two can fuck off, a third voice rang out as a thin man spoke from a distance. He looked like a normal human with no peculiarities, but his eyes had vertical pupils like a snake. What are we waiting for? A woman in a gray dress stepped forward, and with each step she took, the space around her shook like jelly. The four looked at the center and saw a silvery light. A key floated in that light, the reason they were all there. The ticket to fame and power, the one thing they were willing to point swords at their friends for. The first prince raised his hand, and everyone tensed. They channeled their aura, ready to fight when. Did we take care of our surroundings? The prince spoke, instead of attacking. Huh? What surroundings? Princess Ardine tilted her head. You mean them? She pointed to the area behind them. Since their vision was still restricted to only 100 meters, they couldn't see beyond that range. But they were sure that other peak level 7s were lurking, waiting for them to fight it out and steal their spoils. The thin prince and princess in gray looked at each other. How do we talk to them though? We are restricted to this measly 100 meters, the princess in gray asked, a bit embarrassed. She had just returned from a dangerous mission when she heard this news and hopped in without much preparation. The thin man also looked at Prince Mar with an embarrassed expression. The prince sighed and held up a bluish box. This is a treasure from the ruins. My father got it a few years ago. The three looked at him in confusion, but the prince simply tapped the box and spoke in a different voice, filled with anxiety. One of those four has a teleportation talisman. Once that person can touch the key, they'll teleport away. Everyone, let's hurry and stop it. We can't afford to wait. When he finished speaking, the box shone brightly before fading into dust. The prince coughed lightly and spoke in his original voice. Now we wait. Will that even work? The princess in gray asked with a skeptical expression. It's too suspicious. It might as well be a trap. Anyone can think of it. Of course, Princess Artie nodded, but raised her index finger and said, but as long as there's a possibility that it's true, they can't afford to gamble. They must come. Boom. Who has the teleportation talisman? A loud shout cut her off. A prince with long black hair and a shiny red spear entered their 100-meter range. His level, like theirs, was at the peak of level 7. Kane, teleportation talisman. You're playing dirty. A redhead appeared and growled at the black-haired prince. Huh? But I just... Kane, the black-haired prince, was about to refute when another voice came. Rena. So, you're the one with the talisman, huh? A man with a large build appeared and glared at the woman with red hair. The redhead was dumbfounded and spoke. Listen, Horace, So, it's you. Horace, you son of a bitch. Can't expect better from you Venus guys. A woman with short silver hair rolled her sleeves and snorted in contempt. The original four looked at the situation, and their eyes shone with delight. Kane, Rena, and Horace looked at their eyes, then at each other. A single thought appeared in their minds, fuck. We fell into their trap. Let's first eliminate the teleportation guy. Who among you has the teleportation talisman? Do you think this is a joke? Don't cheat. One by one, more princes and princesses entered the region. As more entered, those present realized the trap. But having realized it, they couldn't do anything. If they backed off now, they'd be treated as the one with the talisman and hunted down. If they informed people that this was a trap, they'd risk being sneak attacked by those in hiding. So, everyone stayed silent and played dumb while more and more princes and princesses gathered. Those outside this range also noticed that their fellow peak level 7s were missing, so they, too, were convinced of the truth and entered the center. Finally, 12 peak level 7s were gathered. The 12th one didn't realize he had been tricked. Who among you has the teleportation talisman? He asked loudly. Motherfuckers, because of you, I had to drop my grand plan to sneak attack. You shameless person. Using a talisman in this sacred fight? Show some honor, he said with a righteous expression. If only I could follow my plan and attack them after they were all injured. Fate is a bitch. Come out. Who is it? The prince crossed his arms and said. Everyone was silent. The prince assumed that they all feared him for some reason and continued his speech. 5 minutes passed, and Prince Mar finally spoke. That's all. Are you sure? Princess Ardine asked. Yeah. It's already been 30 minutes since the announcement. He nodded firmly. Well, then. Princess Ardine raised her slender arms. Boom. Boom. As she clenched her fists, the sheer force blasted the air and sent shockwaves throughout. The 12 princes and princesses on the field were alert and activated their powers. They looked at each other and held their breath. Pick your opponent and fight. Prince Mar said, and lightning burst from his body. Wait. We need to find who has the teleportation talisman, MFFFF. The 12th prince was punched in the face. The battle began.